Hello, friends. How are we all? Yes, I am seeing some comments coming in. Welcome. It is the 29th of December for me, and I hope you all had a lovely festive period, whether you were celebrating Hanukkah, Christmas, or indeed Yule. I hope you had a restful time with friends, family, whoever you celebrate with, if indeed you do celebrate. It's been chaotic here. The children are out of routine. They are full of sugar. Everyone's been sleeping at the wrong time, but I think they've all had a fairly good time. So I'm noticing people are commenting that there are two different links. Yes, that is because StreamYard allows me to take advantage of YouTube's new system whereby you can stream now both vertically and horizontally. I am unclear on what people prefer, so I'm streaming to both, and I can see that I'm getting a view account that is equal across both of them. So it could just be that it's collaborating those views. The other good thing is that it gets me all of the comments. I can see if somebody's commenting on their phone in vertical or if they're commenting horizontally. So for example, I don't know what you will see. Let me just put these up and see what you can see. So Jessie, you have said there are two links to the same video. Do you know which one's real? They're both real. They are both real. So you've commented this one here. Your phone one, which I know, is this one, which it doesn't show you the difference, but I can see the difference. Beside it, it's got a little phone. So I know that that one's commented from the phone, and the other one you were commenting, I assume, from your desktop or some such. I have got the options to show the comments on both of these stages. I am happy to do so if people would like me to, or I can just pin the comments as I'm doing here. So before we hop in, because we have got a lot of news to get through today, we have, of course, got our updates, repatriation / decolonization news. We've got new news. We have got some ding dongs, and we've got some events and exhibitions. As always, the articles will be listed in the description box, numbered in numbers that will correspond with the numbers that you should be able to see on the bottom of the screen. Now, in the vertical video version, the slideshow does appear centrally and fairly small. So some of those connections with the description box might be confusing. However, the description box has been copied and pasted over to both. So do with that as you will. If there are tips or changes people would like me to make for this, I'm happy to do so. As we go on, I'm sure we will perfect the system. Thank you for all of you who have made it down, for joining me. If you're watching on the playback, thank you for that as well. Let's say some hellos before we jump in. Lizzie, hello. Thank you so much for joining. Leona, yes. Hope everybody's well as well. Thank you. Hello, Shane. Yes, me and the Merry Men have had a good Christmas. The husband cooked as is his wont, and he did a lovely job. We had our friend come over. She is chosen family for us. She is the aunt that my children refer to as auntie. She's the one that they hang out with the most. So that was very lovely as well. And we've also had a nice opportunity to hang out with Gabriel's new school friends over Christmas. So that's been lovely. He's got a little band of friends, and we've been able to hang out with some of them, and hopefully we'll get a chance to hang out with some more of them as the holidays go on, because that child is climbing the walls. He needs some small people to run around like a raptor with. Hello, Steve. Thank you so much for coming down. Hi, Rebecca. So, thanks to daylight saving time change, the live is at 7:30 a.m. Sydney time. Wowee. Well, hello. Welcome. Good morning. That's early. Esmeralda P, thank you. Hello, thank you too. And Happy New Year to you too. Shannon's back with us after months away. Welcome back. We're excited to have you too. Good evening, Carol. Thank you so much for joining. Happy New Year to you too. Jessie, hello. Thank you for coming down. Yes, Weedy, the stream has just started. And if you can hear my tumble dryer, I don't think you should be able to. It is locked away in a cupboard, but I am trying to get on top of the laundry because obviously it's just, who knows even what day of the week it is. The reason I know it's a Monday is because it says so on my laptop. That's literally the only way I know it's a Monday, because it's that in-between time between Christmas and New Year where who knows who we are anymore. I can't remember my name most of the time. Jodie, blizzard in New York State. Goodness me. I hope it's, I mean, if it was a blizzard here, I probably wouldn't have internet, to be honest. So I hope all is well and you have means to stay warm. Lots of whatever is on vacation, so you can catch us live. Thank you very much. Hotel in Puerto Varas. Lovely. Spending the holidays on holiday to get away from the heat in the city. Sounds fabulous. I have been trying to instigate an abroad Christmas. That's what, when I was a kid, my family, my parents and my grandparents went away pretty much every Christmas I can remember. We always went to Tenerife, and we stayed in like an apartment for 2 weeks. We'd be there Christmas and New Year. So I never had Christmas dinner. I never had presents under the tree, but I did get to go swimming in the swimming pool on Christmas morning. So that was, also the Canaries. There you go, Carol, in Gran Canaria. I think, do you know what? Christmas in the Canaries is lovely. The other place we went to once, I'm not sure if it's still the same because it was years ago, but we went to Madeira one Christmas. Oh, they do Christmas. The lights, it makes Blackpool look poorly lit. They light up the entire place, and there's nativity scenes on street corners. I seem to remember that a few of the nativity scenes had living animals in them, like baby goats. But maybe that is my child brain extrapolating, but I'm pretty sure that the nativity scenes, some of them in Madeira, had live animals around the manger. It was incredible. Now then, clue. This is a picture that I took, because I haven't been sent a picture of background for a while. So we're going through my collection. If you can guess where I am, it's not a train station or a transport museum. You're right with museum, not train or transport. See if you know where it is. It's actually, it was refurbed in the last few years. It reopened. I went there, took this picture. It's a great time. I recommend checking it out. Ding, ding, ding. We've got a correct guess as to where I am. But before we do so, Shane, did we have a gonk on the wonk this year? Yes. In fact, we've now got gonks in triplicate, but on top of that, we have also got 3 light up gonks that are stuck to our house window that see out. We are gonktastic. We've got our standard gonk on the bottom of the stairs. That is the gonk that looks after the stairs all year round, but changes seasonally. My husband has got a cupboard of gonks. So we have Christmas gonk currently. We will next have spring gonk, then Easter gonk, then summer gonk. You get the pattern. They have different flowers, and Halloween gonks, pretty fun and spooky. So that's always there. There's a variation of a gonk on our banister, but we also have 2 tree guarding gonks as well. They come out for Christmas, and we've also got the 3 light up gonks. So that is what's happening. Pistol Annie says, do the backgrounds have to be from the UK? This one is, but no, they don't have to be. As long as you tell me where it is when you send it, because I may not know. Venomous Care Bear says, do I dare ask what a gonk is? It's like a gnome type figure where the hat covers its eyes. It's safe to Google. the gonk is safe to Google. So I've seen one correct guess come in as to where I am. And the winner is Reen. This is Young V&A near Bethnal Green Station. Used to be called the Museum of Childhood. Still is as Young V&A. It's a children's museum. So it's got loads of nostalgic games on display. But in the refurb, they have got, for example, the place where we spent the longest of the times was in this sort of theatre setup they've got. So they've got costumes for the children to play with, and they've got like a stage set up that you can go and pretend to be on stage. When I tell you, we went a couple of years ago. So Gabriel was 2 or 3, I think. And we were there, and he had about 8 different various costumes, almost like a collection of capes that he was wearing about his person, and he was sort of spinning and twirling, and we were all getting a bit hungry, but he was having his cape time. And it's the only time I've done this. I got Amazon up on my phone. Other retailers are available, but I was desperate, and I showed him the various capes, and I went, Gabriel, if you take those capes off and leave with us now, you can pick whatever cape you like, and it will be here tomorrow. And when I tell you, he immediately took off his capes. He got me where he wanted me, right where he wanted me. So he took off his capes, and I bought him a cape then and there, and we went for lunch. So yeah, the Young V&A is brilliant. I think there's definitely something for everybody, and I think it's really well set up for kids. I would say if you are going and you don't want to spend a small fortune on lunch there, either take a pack up or go to one of the cafes in the vicinity, because it's spenny. But then a lot of museum cafes are, particularly in free museums, which this is free to enter as well. They may have some paid exhibitions, but the museum itself is free to enter. And they do have loads of different activities on. Check out their timetable to see what they've got going on. People are Googling gonks. Venomous Care Bear, does it have to be someplace historical or just weird work? I mean, I think I probably would say maybe not a building that's been made in the 21st century. But for example, if it were some interesting or historical architecture, if it was, for example, a grade 1 or 2 listed building, but it was made in the 60s, crack on. Yes, Jessie has it there. Historically interesting, a connection to history, but it hasn't got to be, or a museum, hasn't got to be many, many years old. Weezy said, every bath towel became a cape when my brothers were little. Yes, we have had many a blanket cape. I have had to prize the blanket cape off of my son, because he does like to, he'll sort of, he'll be just in his pants because it's summer, but he will then wrap himself up in a fleece blanket and try and go out into the communal garden in the midday blazing heat. And I have to suggest to him that's perhaps not the best idea, because he's wrapped himself in a fleece blanket, and also the neighbours might think it's weird that there's a small child running around almost naked, apart from his knickers and a long blanket cape that he's wearing. So there we go. There we go. Steve says, an article about the museum in Manchester. Anything you want me to know, let me know if you want to look anything up. I will do, and it's entirely possible. We have many, as you can see, we've got many news items to check out today. So let's hop into the thank yous, because loads of you have sent me articles for which I am incredibly grateful. Let's hop in here. There we go. That's the wrong orientation. That's what I like. There we go. So I need to thank Elverta, Snudpuckle, Beth, Yvonne, Shane, my long-suffering husband, Mr. Dr. Cat, Jessie, Daniella, Joseph, Sarah, Sheri, Alicia, Katheryn and Kathy, Nancy, Rebecca, Jenna, Liliana, Robyn, Katherine, different Katherine, spelt differently. I did double check. And Count Balerion. Thank you so much for sending over these items. So, without further ado, let us hop on in to the updates first of all. We have an update on what the Louvre is, the decision the Louvre is making, and this headline points it out, that after the heist from the Louvre, the ticket prices have been increased for non-EU visitors by 45%. So people who are from outside of the EU will have to pay €32 or $37 a ticket, which is a 45% increase from the previous price of €22 or $25 a ticket. This raise in prices is expected to bring in millions of euros annually, and it's about modernising and upgrading the Louvre. In particular, they have talked about upgrading the security system, I think perhaps somewhat understandably, considering what's going on. I, of course, can see this being something that certain individuals in the political sphere in the United Kingdom will choose to weaponize, and they will position it as some sort of spite for Brexit. I don't think this is, but anybody who does that and sees it as being, this is examples of them spiting us, I would say that they are probably have delusions of their own importance to the Louvre Museum in Paris. I think the notion that they are hiking their ticket prices 45%, some 9 years after the Brexit vote, the notion that that is what's happening, almost 10 years after the Brexit vote, the notion that that is what's happening, I genuinely think you probably should go and have a nap. Is this going to damage people attending? Probably not. Can't imagine it. I cannot imagine that this is going to put people off going into the Louvre, particularly if you've travelled all that way and it's one of the heavy hitters, isn't it? The Louvre, Versailles, you're going. Somebody, Wheezy asks, entry to the Louvre used to be free on Sundays. I did not know that. Is that still the case? There's no mention of that. But there's also no mention of it being the case. So I am unsure. We will. I don't believe so. There is a thought as well that this may, if this is successful, it may lead to there being some price hikes across other French institutions. For example, the Paris of Versailles, they are allegedly considering a hike of €3 or $3.50 for non-EU visitors. They do point out that nearly 9 million people, most of them international visitors, visited the Louvre last year. 10% of those visitors are from the United States. Around 6% are from China. So this is potentially going to rake in a lot of revenue. Running a museum like this is not cheap, and clearly work needs to continue to be done, not just on preserving the pieces, but also on the building and all that sort of thing. Steve, are you suggesting that it might still be the case that Parisians can go to the Louvre for free on Sundays? Interesting. This is not something that's in the article. It's entirely possible this is what's going on. I'm not sure. What I will say is it's not uncommon for locals to have special access. So if you live, for example, in Tower Hamlets, I believe you get a heavily discounted rate to go into the tower. Certainly, if you have a Brighton and Hove council tax certificate, you get a discount to go into the Brighton Pavilion. So for proximal locals in British institutions, there's certainly a case that if you live close, you pay less. It's not unusual. Leona's pointed out the Louvre is free on the first Sunday of the month from October to March, and it has to be booked online. Thank you so much for that additional information. Is that something that is applicable and available to everyone, or do you have to have some kind of proof that you are a Parisian or a Paris citizen? I would not be surprised either way, but that's great if there is the availability. Holocomification is the logic that EU residents pay taxes that help these type of institutions already. Potentially, I mean, certainly. I mean, anybody who's connected to UNESCO, any nation that connects to UNESCO, is also potentially funding them as well. So I'm not sure they will get additional EU funding, but they on top of that they do get a UNESCO fund, I believe. Certainly, I think Versailles does, or they have access to it. Maybe they're a UNESCO World Heritage Site, which I assume means that you can access some funds, but don't quote me on that. But yes, I assume there will be European funding involved. I don't know how it works if you have a paid entry museum, because obviously the museums in the UK that are free to enter are paid for or heavily subsidised by the British government. So if it's a paid for museum, I'm not quite sure how the EU funds that. I don't know how every museum is funded, but that's certainly a very interesting question. Oh, so Leona says that the first Sunday applies to everyone and it's free entry to anyone under 18. That's brilliant, I think. That's brilliant. Fantastic. Venomous Care Bear points out that Florida and California natives get discounts for Disney. Lots of big places have deals for locals. You have to ask, and why shouldn't they? I mean, the price of a Disney ticket is eye-watering, but if you can get somebody who will come regularly, then that's and also people come and stay with them, and if they can get a discounted ticket for themselves, then why bring their friends as well? So yeah, there is a business sense to this, I think. So let's hop on. We have learned that libraries and museums have got a return of their federal funding after there were cuts made by the current administration. A statement posted on the agency's website, the agency being the Institute of Museum and Library Services, reads as follows, quote, "This action supersedes any prior notices which may have been received related to the grant termination. This agency is independent and it's in charge of awarding federal grant funding to libraries and museums across the country." So they are saying this supersedes the executive order. I have no idea who has the power. Is that enough to just say it supersedes it? Does a presidential executive order countermand everything? I have no idea. But this is what this article is saying. It's being referred to as a massive win for the libraries in all states. Quote, "We're breathing a sigh of relief, but the fight is not finished. The administration can appeal court decisions. Congress can choose not to fund IMLS in future years. ALA calls on everyone who values libraries to remind their Congress members and elected officials at every level why America's libraries deserve more, not fewer resources." The article is hosted on NPR. They have reached out to IMLS representatives to comment. They do point out that federal funding only makes up a small proportion of budget for public libraries, but it does pay for workforce training and pilot programs. It also supports basic library services like internet access in rural libraries. In 2024, the IMLS awarded $266 million to museums and libraries. Lots of whatever says I think it was a court decision. Yes, it was a court. I mean, I have no understanding of how this system works. So a court decision potentially overrides an executive order? Is what it seems to be saying to me here. I feel very unsure of how good of news this is. So the federal judge, Liliana says, claimed it was unlawful and therefore reinstated it. So the federal judge can gainsay a presidential executive order. Because we sort of get the impression, I think, over here, that an executive order is like, the end, I've changed it, and that's what it's going to be. But presumably it can then be challenged in the legal framework if it is in breach of something or the other thing. Okay. Thank you for this. Theodosius Snudpuckle, courts can override federal order, but then presumably they can then be challenged on that too. So there could be some back and forth on this, perhaps. We'll see. As the updates happen, I will let you know if this then gets reversed again. Hopefully it won't. Hopefully it won't. And our next update, last time we talked about that diamonds and other jewels that were found in that bank vault. So this is the Florentine diamond. It was in a bank vault in Canada, having been thought to have been lost or stolen for more than a century. Now, though, the family that owned the gem originally, the Habsburgs, I'm not quite sure which branch of the Habsburgs we're talking about, although presumably not the ones where the chins and all of the inbreeding meant they stopped being able to have children. Because there are a few. Anyway, the Habsburg family in Austria is apparently having a commission to see whether they can claim what's these gems back as their own. This is the Republic of Austria, and it depends on the commissioner's finding. The centerpiece of the jewellery collection is a 137-carat Florentine diamond. It's a gem that disappeared, and it sparked so many kind of theories about where it might have been. Charles I, the Emperor of Austro-Hungary and a member of the Habsburg dynasty, had the jewels shipped to Switzerland. That was really hard to say. Shipped to Switzerland when the family left Vienna to live in exile in Switzerland. The Habsburg family then took the jewels to Canada when they escaped the Nazis in World War II. Then the jewels were kept secret because Charles's widow, the Empress Zita, it was out of respect to her, these were kept secret. There is legislation that was enacted by the First Austrian Republic in 1919, expropriated Habsburg family private property in Austria. But apparently it doesn't apply to the jewels because at the time they were outside of the country. There's a statement, though, from the Austrian government that described the gems having been, quote, taken from the treasury and taken abroad. So there's now a committee that's going to look into, and it was, quote, commissioned to reconstruct the provenance and dislocation history of the objects. The Habsburg family, their descendants, wants to display the diamond at a Canadian museum for the next few years. There is apparently no plan to sell or speculate on the jewel's monetary value. So the question is, as this was a governing house of Austria, does the Austrian state have a claim to the jewels? Are they state jewels? Or is this the family's jewels, the Habsburg family jewels? We will have to see. And I'm assuming that we'll see what the commission finds, and then we'll see, no doubt, what the legal case ensuing from it might require. And when there are further updates, I will let you know about that. We have found out in an update what the Bayeux Tapestry is going to be insured for for the British Museum exhibition, and that is coming in at £800 million. This is, and it's going to be here in 2026, and this is the 70-meter embroidery, and it's going to be, the cover's going to be backed under something called the Government Indemnity Scheme. It's an alternative to commercial insurance, which allows art and cultural objects to be shown in the UK. The government, the Treasury for His Majesty's Treasury, a spokesperson for His Majesty's Treasury said, the Government Indemnity Scheme is a long-standing scheme that allows museums and galleries to borrow high-value works for major exhibitions, increasing visitor numbers and providing public benefits. Without this cover, public museums and galleries would face a substantial commercial insurance problem, which would be significantly less cost-effective. So this is going to be on, this tapestry is on loan while the Bayeux Tapestry Museum in Normandy is closed for renovation. It's set to be reopened in October 2027. This is part of a major loan agreement between the UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer and the French President Emmanuel Macron. The British Museum will then lend the Sutton Hoo collection, the Louis Chessman, and other items to France in return for this tapestry. However, people in France in the art and conservation field have called on Macron to abandon the project because they are worried about irreparable damage being done to the tapestry. Steve's got plans to do a trip to London in the autumn. I mean, I think it's a very exciting thing that is going to be on display. I probably will go and see it myself. Of course, as I've said before, I don't know where my ethics stand on this, because on the one hand, I think I've made it abundantly clear that I think that the British Museum should repatriate the items that they've been called upon to repatriate. And their intransigence in that matter does give me pause when it comes to, because the Bayeux Tapestry exhibition is no doubt going to be a paid-for exhibition, as it should be. And so putting money into the pocket of the British Museum, does that in some way make it seem like I am co-signing or approving of their policy of not repatriation? The flip side of it is the British Museum is also a repository for some of the most important cultural artifacts from the history of my nation, things that I care about, that I want to see continue to be cared for. I don't want the British Museum to go bust by any means. I don't want things to not be looked after, particularly the things that have been stolen from elsewhere. So I'm really wrangling with what the ethics on this are. And maybe I'll come to a conclusion. If I do, I shall tell you what I've come down on. Jessie says, maybe I could get a free ticket as a historian. Look, I mean, I could reach out. I mean, if they've seen it, if I got it, I don't think they'll have me. But I could reach out and say I would like to come to the preview. And no doubt if they were keen on it, when I've done previews for other exhibitions and I've put them on this channel and they've got the response that they've got, and I've spoken to a curator and I've loved filming them, that does work as, the issue is that then works as promotion for the exhibition. So I'm more inclined to say, actually, I will go by myself and pay just to see it as a private person, rather than potentially promoting it, because then what does that say? I'm in a quandary. I'm in a quandary, I'll be honest with you, about what the correct thing is to do. I lean towards saying it's best for me to just go pay myself and do as I would choose as an individual, rather than put it through this channel and thus promote it on the channel as if I'm okay with it. I have no idea. Venomous Care Bear. I mean, look, I could ask. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to be so for real with you. Any PR person from the British Museum is almost certainly going to take a cursory glance over my channel, and I do think that it would be potentially odd for them to go, yeah, come on down, meet the curators, come behind the scenes. If they did, huge. Of course, it's not the curators that are making the choices. It's not the curators that are making the choices. So I could ask. I don't know what the ethics are. Next year I would like to find more people to talk about the ethics of repatriation with. I'd like to reach out and have more of those conversations, and see what more I can learn. So I'm very much sort of freewheeling it in terms of what I think is right, and it's entirely possible that I have catastrophically misjudged on certain things, and I'm just shooting from the hip. So I would like to speak to more people who are more informed of the state of repatriation, because they're either doing it or they're arguing for it. Yes, so watch this space. I'll see. I will see what I can figure out. A few months ago, we talked about there being a new station near the Colosseum, and we've also talked about how archaeology can be brought into new locations, new technology, and feats of engineering. And it seems like that is what's happening with what they're referring to as the Colosseum Metro. If this is opened, and they have during its 11 years of construction, a lot of archaeological finds were made, and so they have now got on display. It's a destination that's going to serve tourists and commuters alike. So they've got on display things like ceramic fragments, statues, oil lamp, stone vessel, hairpins, knives. They also, when they were doing the dig, found 28 ancient wells at the site, which connects the old Colosseum station that opened in 1955. What's happened here is really complex engineering works that can coexist with what's referred to as the extraordinary historical stratification of Rome. And you've got some examples of some things on display here. So you've got these kinds of finds in like a kiln, I think, looking space. And if you can see all these people crowded around, I think it's called Imperial Station on Metro Line C in Rome. This photo was taken December 16th. And you can see they've got displays of the pots and the various ceramics and the lamps and things. I love when this happens. I love when if new homes are being built, or offices, or whatever it might be, I absolutely love it when they incorporate the archaeology. I think there's a work being done. It's on the site of an Elizabethan Jacobean theatre, the former site of an Elizabethan Jacobean theatre, and I can't remember which Elizabethan Jacobean theatre it is, but I do know that the architects involved are looking to create a museum of sort of Elizabethan Jacobean theatre history on the site. I keep my eyes peeled for it, because my hope is that I might be able to go down and have a look. I have got it up on a website. Which one was it? What was it? It was they're opening the Museum of Shakespeare. It's on the site of the old Curtain Playhouse. So I'm keeping my eyes peeled for when that's actually going to open, because currently it's the architects that are building the housing. But I think this is fabulous, and it's very much how I enjoy these two worlds coming together. I think it's brilliant. Rebecca, my unexpected favourite place when I was in Vienna was the underground 11th century chapel they accidentally excavated when upgrading the Stephenplatz train station in the 60s. Yeah, and there is something for me that's particularly thrilling about that juxtaposition of the old and the new. I find something thrilling standing on the stairs, for example, of the White Tower, which used to be the tallest building on the horizon, but then looking over and being able to see the Shard, which is now, to my understanding, the tallest building in Europe. There's something thrilling about that. There's something thrilling about walking near to Borough Market and seeing Southwark Cathedral, and then seeing the Golden Hind in Dry Dock, and then walking a little bit further and going past the old Bishop's Palace, Bishop Winchester's Palace, onto the Globe. There's something about that, and amongst it is, you can see the Dome of St Paul's and all of the kind of, but around it are these big glass buildings. There's something that just tickles a part of my brain that I really enjoy. Cranky Sealake. There's a Lidwin Island has Viking archaeology on show in the floor. That is so cool. That's so cool. I don't know if you're nearby to that little in Ireland. If anybody is near to the little in Ireland that's got Viking archaeology on show in the floor, could somebody please take a photograph of it for me and email that over? That is excellent. I love that kind of stuff. I love it. That's so cool. And yes, staying back to the British Museum, the Elgin marbles are set to stay on display at the British Museum during a £1 billion refurbishment. So the director has confirmed they will remain in London despite the Greek government hoping for their return. There is set to be a mass refit, rejig of the Western Range galleries over the next decade, including the Parthenon rooms, which are leaking. And this is where the Parthenon sculptures are kept, described here in the title as the Elgin marbles, of course. That name, what you call it, is, of course, also political. The Greek officials hoped that the renovation work would have an opportunity to reopen negotiations. However, the museum director has said that they are staying in London. Dr. Nicholas Cullinan said some things absolutely have to stay on view elsewhere in the museum. People come to the museum to see them and they expect them. So we've got plans in place for that. To be honest, we have thought of them, the marbles, as in the category of things that people are in the museum to see. This work is going to be carried out in phases, and the discussions about what's going to happen to the Parthenon sculptures in the long term, there are discussions with Greece. Apparently they are deadlocked. So we will see. Dr. Cullinan, who previously led the National Portrait Gallery, is strongly in favour of loan deals with countries where ancient artefacts originate, such as India, Ghana, and Nigeria. He thinks it would be sensible to break the deadlock, and talks with the Greek authorities are ongoing. He added, quote, "If we were able to reach a deal with Greece, which would be wonderful, there is a scenario in which some of them, the marbles, could be on display in Greece, and things from Greece could be on display in the museum." That's absolutely possible. That's absolutely possible. The question is, how does that come about? And we've got more on that update in a moment. But to do those things, I want to talk more about what the British Museum might have planned when we hop into repatriations, which is happening now. Leona saying, is the government trying to change Export Control Act of 2002 to give a backdoor route to send them back without changing ownership? We're going to have a look at some repatriation stuff, because I think the British Museum is trying to see if loans will get them out of it. Of course, the issue is, if a nation accepts an item of their own cultural heritage, something that was looted from their country, if they accept it on loan from the British Museum, even if they accept it on long-term or even permanent loan from the British Museum, implicit in that is the appropriateness and correctness of ownership being claimed by the British Museum. which in turn damages their claims that these items were rightfully theirs because they've accepted them on loan. On top of that, it also potentially damages other nations who want to claim ownership rather than the right to loan it back. If it's loaned, then somebody else is the rightful owner, and that becomes the issue. And I think it's going to be a problem. And I also feel that if something is loaned, it can be recalled. And I can understand, and I think it's offering it as a long-term or even permanent loan, offering that. And then if the Greek authorities go, no, it's ours, there is a way in which that is very easy to PR spin as we've been trying to find a way to negotiate. We've been trying to come to terms, but they are being so stubborn. In the same way, it's like making it a gift. Well, we'll gift this to you. That infers that the person giving the gift or starting the loan has rightful ownership to make that loan or make that gift. So the recipient country saying, no, it's ours, you don't get to gift it or loan it to us, it belongs to us. It's very easy to paint them as being unwilling to compromise. And as Sarah Squeaks points out, it's that precedence of ownership. If they agree to the loan, it's as good as saying those are rightfully yours. And I can see why they wouldn't want to do that. Let's do some repatriations. Oh, sorry, one update before we get into repatriations. This is the GEM, the Grand Egyptian Museum. They are reassembling an ancient Egyptian pharaoh's boat. This looks fabulous. This is a cedarwood boat that belonged to King Khufu. It's a 42-meter or 137-foot long vessel, and it's sitting next to an already assembled twin that's been on display. This reassembly is set to take 4 years. I think it's really cool that it seems that you can watch it being reassembled. I love that. This boat was discovered was one of two discovered in 1954, opposite the southern side of the Great Pyramid. And the excavation of its wooden parts began in 2014. They still don't quite know what the boats are for, but there is a suggestion that it might have been used to transport the king's body for his funeral, or perhaps were intended to be, or may have been intended for use for his afterlife so that he could journey with the sun god Ra. So that's cool. Has anybody been to the Grand Egyptian Museum? Let me know what you think of it. It does look really fabulous. With two small sproglets, it may be a while before I get out there, but I would love to go and visit. So we're on to repatriations now. Ethiopia has received artifacts that were held for 100 years in Germany. 12 historical artifacts have been returned to Ethiopia. They were kept by a German family. They were collected in the 1920s by Germany's then Germany's then envoy to Ethiopia. That was Franz Weiss and his wife, Hedwig. They were given back to the Institute of Ethiopian Studies at Addis Ababa University. Included in the collection were crowns, shields, and paintings, all of which were considered to be culturally and historically significant in Ethiopia. The family's intention apparently was to return the artifacts, and their reason for doing this was, quote, to share their beauty with the public and preserve the culture and history connected to my father's birth. The items, according to the family, were either gifts or purchases. The plan is for these pieces to be opened up to public for research and academic study. And then efforts are going to continue to bring back ancient artifacts that are found in the hands of individuals and institutions all over the world. Because during colonial rule in Africa, thousands of cultural artifacts were plundered. And so now there is a call by African countries for the return of looted items that has, of course, been met with some success in recent years. In 2022, Germany was the first country to return some of the Benin bronzes to Nigeria in a bid to deal with its, quote, dark colonial history. Snudpuckle, no Ark of the Covenant, huh? Not to my knowledge. Not seen it mentioned. But I'm not mates with Indiana Jones, so anybody got a direct line? Let me know. Poland's Prime Minister has described the return by Germany of medieval archive looted during World War II as more than just a symbolic gesture. They have described the lost heritage as a, quote, treasure. A haul of documents related to the Teutonic Knights, which, of course, for those of you up on your World War II history, you will know there were many members of the upper echelons of the Third Reich who were obsessed not only with methamphetamine, but also with the Teutonic Knights as well. And also, this is a Catholic military religious order founded in the last 12th century. 73 parchment documents that date from the 13th to 15th century have been sought by Polish scholars since 1948. The documents have been described, and the restitution has been described as, quote, the most important and valuable return of looted cultural heritage objects in Poland's modern history. World War II, Nazi Germany systematically looted Polish cultural heritage. The 500,000 art pieces taken, 11,000 paintings by Polish artists, 2,800 by European masters, 75,000 manuscripts, and tens of thousands of rare books. Wider claims, though, for wartime restitution, despite this, have stalled. The previously nationalist conservative ruling party, the Law and Justice Party, filed a reparations claim in 2022, demanding 1.3 trillion euros in damages for Poland's wartime losses. Berlin rejected this claim, arguing the matter is closed, but talks are still ongoing over the living victims of Nazi crimes. Germany has offered a symbolic compensation payment of 200 million euro, which Warsaw sees as inadequate. So, pardon me, who have we got here? So Donald Tusk, oh, hang on, my things just jumped there. Donald Tusk has said, quote, how happy if you want to make the gesture. If we don't get a quick and unambiguous statement, then next year I will consider Poland fulfilling the need from its own funds. He added that the matter remained open and would be further discussed. As Woozy points out, meth is a way to burn your candle at both ends. I don't recommend it. No meth. I fear that meth is not the way to go. With many choices, it's when people, this kind of. I see it on social media, and it's happening. It's in the kind of the trad wife wheelhouse, and very sad young men who want a trad wife who talk about how happy the housewives were in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and how they'd be slim and trim and peppy for their husbands, and they, get 12 hours of sleep a night. I'm like, yes, they were slim and peppy because they were on speed. They were on speed. They were on amphetamines, and they then would pop some kind of sedative to sleep 12 hours at night. So that is what was happening. They weren't happy. They were medicated They were very, very medicated. Julesy says meth is bad. Okay. My husband has said that meth is a hell of a drug. Yes. Meth is not good, friends. I can't believe I'm having to point this out in a History News live stream. Don't do meth. Don't do meth, kids. Don't do it. Let's continue with the repatriation news. Now, here we go. The British Museum's looted ewer set is returning to Ghana on a long-term loan. Just quickly, Elizabeth Larson, the idiots who think their grandmothers and great-grandmothers were delighted with their lifestyle in the 40s are delusional. They clearly haven't talked to their grandmothers. Your grandmother could not get a bank account, a mortgage, anything, hysterectomy without your grandfather's permission. She wasn't happy. She was trapped. And there's a reason why Nana and her friends were frequently widowed fairly young. And the answer to that, my friends, is antifreeze. Yeah. No fault divorce. Men started living longer. Seriously, keep slim while pregnant, not get too fat. Always cigarettes and speed. I mean, to be fair, that does explain some people's parents. So this is what we're talking about. British Museum is looking into this long-term loan thing. This is a 14th century English-made Asante ewer that was seized from the Royal Palace in Kumasi in 1896, and it's been held in the British Museum ever since. So it was made in England, ended up in West Africa, no one knows how, and it's expected that it's going to be loaned to Ghana next year. It was looted, though, from the Royal Palace in Kumasi and then acquired by the British Museum. It's an official loan. There have been informal discussions happening, and the British Museum is apparently open to an arrangement. This is a long-term loan, normally for a 3-year period. As it says here, by agreeing to a loan, the Ghanaian authorities would be effectively acknowledging the British Museum's ownership, apparently ruling out any claim for permanent restitution. So the British Museum acknowledges that this ewer is loot, and however, and asserts that it might have been displayed at medieval feast, that it transitioned from a highly regarded ritual object in the courtyard of the Asante King's Palace to a looted war trophy and museum acquisition. So they recognise that it's loot, but in that they are still claiming ownership. So I don't know what this means for other claims of repatriation. I don't know. So this was looted during the Fourth Anglo-Asante War. It was then auctioned off by military authorities, bought by a man called Charles St. Ledger Barter. He is the one who realised the ewer was British because of an inscription in Old English. He then wrote a letter to the British Museum where he speculated that it might have been taken by the Crusaders to Palestine, and from there worked its way through Africa after capture by the Saracens. The ewer was then sold to the British Museum for £50, where it's always been displayed as an English medieval masterpiece. I don't know. I don't know. Meanwhile, Egyptologists are calling on the British Museum to return the Rosetta Stone. So the Graduate Museum has led to renewed calls. The opening of it has led to renewed calls to the British Museum to return the Rosetta Stone. It was taken out of Egypt by British force in 1801, and it was key to deciphering hieroglyphics. The former Minister of Tourism and Antiquities, Zaha Hawa, said it was time for Western European museums to make amends regarding their holdings of ancient Egyptian artifacts. Quote, I want two things. Number one, museums to stop buying stolen artifacts. And number two, I need three objects to come back. The Rosetta Stone from the British Museum, the Zodiac from the Louvre, and the bust of Nefertiti from Berlin. Other prominent Egyptologists, including Monica Hanna, have echoed this message, noting that such artifacts were taken during colonial times. Quote, the opening of GEM, the Grand Egyptian Museum, gives this message that Egypt has done its homework very well to officially ask for the objects. Egypt should start asking officially for the restitution and repatriation of different objects that were looted. A museum spokesman said over email, though, we have received no formal request from the Egyptian government to repatriate the Rosetta Stone. The British Museum works with partners all over the world, including colleagues throughout Egypt, on projects, exhibitions, and research, and we enjoy a long-standing and collaborative relationship with the Egyptian Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities. The British Museum noted the Rosetta Stone is one of 29 known official decrees from the Ptolemaic period, engraved with Egyptian hieroglyphs, Egyptian demonic, and ancient Greek that help scholars to understand the hieroglyphic text. 22 of these remained in Egypt, including the famed Decree of Canopus, a centerpiece of the Egyptian Museum's in Cairo's collection. The British Museum said it's unable to return objects permanently from its collection outside of exceptional circumstances because of the British Museum Act of 1963. The inauguration of the Grand Egyptian Museum at the beginning of November is the end of a 20-year-long construction effort that was hindered by political turmoil in Egypt, the pandemic, and regional conflict. It did cost more than $1 billion, and it covers an area of 120 acres. That's apparently the same size as Vatican City. It's the centerpiece of Egypt's bid to revive international tourism, and it covers 5,000 years of the country's history. There is also the entire content of the tomb of Tutankhamun and a replica of the Rosetta Stone. So who said about the 3D? Yes, videos could it not be 3D printed? So there is a replica of the Rosetta Stone in the Grand Egyptian Museum. So yes, it can be 3D printed because they've got one. So I'm assuming it's 3D. Lorcan. The thing about repatriating something like the Rosetta Stone is no one cares in the public if it's a copy, as long as you're learning from it. Only the British Museum seems to care about this. I mean, look, just give me a little thumbs up in these rolling comments. Give me a little thumbs up if you have been to the Natural History Museum in London before the whale was in Hinsey Hall and you stood and took a picture by Dippy. Just a little thumbs up if you have a picture of you as a kid or whatever, or with your kids in front of Dippy. If you then went to the shop and bought your very own Dippy to take home, because I'm thumbing up all the time, big time for me. I remember my first trip to the Natural History Museum. I went and stood by Dippy, got a picture, and then I went into the shop there and I bought a brontosaurus and I brought it home, and it's still somewhere at my parents' house. We all remember it. To my knowledge, there's certainly about 4 Dippies. I think they may have different names, but there are at least four casts of exactly that same dinosaur. And the one in the Natural History Museum is a cast. It's not dinosaur bones. It's a cast. If you come in through the other entrance, the Exhibition Road entrance, and you come and see the Stegosaurus in there, then that was not a complete set of remains, as it often isn't. So some of those bones that you're seeing are cast bones to make up a full dinosaur. Every person that's got a picture of themselves in the Natural History Museum in front of Dippy has got themselves in front of a picture of a cast of a dinosaur. And I don't think that I don't think it's any less special. I don't think it's any less awe-inspiring that it's a cast. As crazy as they say, genuinely don't care if I'm looking at real or a replica. As long as it's a good replica, I don't care either. I don't care either. Clue, if you've been in front of a Diplodocus, a full-scale Diplodocus, there's a chance that it's a cast of the same one. So there's a whole bunch of them. Jessie, I think every museum should be able to have a super high quality replica so that more people can see them up close. I also think that we should have a way of making replicas that can also be object handled. So more than one replica. Let's have more than one replica, and let's have some that can be object handled, because not everyone can see. Let's make museums more tactile. Why don't we? Green, at the museum we have the cast courts, one of the most popular museum rooms in the museum. Army lady, where is the real stone then? It's at the British Museum. I believe it's on display. It's been a while since I've been to the Egyptian galleries, but I believe it's on display in the Egyptian galleries to this day. Unless they've moved it, I believe it is. Jessie, absolutely a full replica for display, individual tactile parts for accessibility, and just flat out cool to touch for everybody. My husband has just messaged asking, wait, Dippy isn't real? There is, darling, there is a real Dippy. It's just not the one that you saw. It's just not the one that you saw. Clue, object handling is fallen out of fashion near me, where it used to be prevalent. I think there's been some rumblings about bringing it back. Yeah, look, so object handling was getting super interesting, particularly with the new rise of things like smell reconstruction. So there was some really interesting stuff happening with tactile museum exhibits, etc. And then the pandemic happened, and then all of a sudden, passing things around to be touched by a bunch of people became really fell out of favor, understandably. So object handling sort of came to an immediate roadblock in 2020. And then, of course, everything closed down. So those museums that were reliant on visitors to keep the lights on, so to speak, they have been working pretty tirelessly since 2021 into 2022 to get themselves back up and running to a position where they can ensure that they can have visitor footfall, they can do all the things they need to do. We lost some of our smaller museums because of this. And so things like object handling that needs potentially a staff member, it needs those objects to be cared for, cleaned, reproduced, protected, etc. It's hopefully going to come back. But the reason why there's been such a pause is because of that. Now then, this is the same with the British Museum. This is a really interesting article. Can the British Museum lend its way out of criticisms over its colonial holdings? The British Museum is sending some of its prized art and artefacts on long-term loan to the countries that the British Empire previously colonised. While those nations have long called for the repatriation of objects they consider stolen, the institution may be hoping to blunt some of those criticisms by sending valuable historical items, though not always those that come from the recipients of the loans. A Mumbai museum is now going to host a loan of some 80 artifacts, including an ancient wooden model of an Egyptian riverboat, devotional Sumerian statues from 2200 BCE, Roman mosaic from London, and a marble bust of the Roman Emperor Augustus. This is apparently the largest ever loan of ancient material to India, and it's the first deal of its kind between the British Museum and a non-Western museum. Nicholas Cullen said, quote, he's the British Museum director, you don't have to, this is really interesting wording, and I'm fascinated to know what you think. The director of the British Museum said, you don't have to embarrass your own country to do something positive with another country. It can actually be very beneficial. Cultural diplomacy, that's what museums should do. The artifacts are on view in a gallery that disputes colonial misinterpretation by highlighting India's contributions to civilization. All cultures are great cultures, and we need to respect all cultures. Through this exhibition, there is decolonization, an attempt made to decolonize the narrative. We suffered for many years, and colonization penetrated into our education, our culture. There is a kind of emergence. I'm not going to use the word revolt, but we are emerging with dignity and very proud of history. As we have long talked about, the British Museum does have many contested artworks, Benin bronzes, Parthenon sculptures, and they lean on that 1963 Museum Act to say they are not allowed to restitute items. There are also other items in the UK, the Koh-i-Noor diamond, which is in the Crown Jewels. But the British Museum also holds so that's held by the Royal Collection. The British Museum holds the Amavarati marbles, which come from the Great Shrine of Amavarati. Collins said to the Telegraph, there is another model, a much more positive one of collaboration rather than this kind of zero-sum binary all or nothing model that people put forward. We think that this model that we are developing is a very positive one and it's very innovative. Every case is different. You can never apply the same criteria to two different cultures, countries or territories. Some are more difficult than others, but we are still trying. Crazy artist. So it's embarrassing to acknowledge that you've stolen items. Well, the thing is, the British Museum will happily say this is looted. Apparently, the embarrassment is not recognizing you've looted them. That's fine. The embarrassment is saying, well, we looted these, so we're going to give them back. The embarrassment is saying, we looted this and that was wrong, so we're going to not. I don't know. It's a really interesting choice of words, though, isn't it? You don't have to embarrass your own country to do something positive with another country. So the refusal to engage in repatriation is patriotic, ? So what does that mean for places like the Horniman, Pitt Rivers, the places that have engaged with decolonization and repatriation? What does it mean for the German institutions? Are they not proud of? Have they embarrassed their country? Has the Horniman therefore embarrassed our country? Sarah, that's a really interesting wording. We need to get better at being uncomfortable and acknowledge that discomfort or embarrassment does not mean a personal failing. It's absolutely ridiculous. Yeah. I mean, I am. It's so strange to me because my sense of embarrassment as somebody who works in heritage sites, my sense of embarrassment is when a visitor from a culture that I know we have looted things from, says something to me about an item that we have stolen, and if they say to me, well, yes, of course, that was looted, and I go, yeah, it was. Yeah, it was. And sometimes I'm like, am I allowed to just kind of go and we should give it back? I think we should. I think we should give it back. It's so much more embarrassing to me that we have this stuff and that we're going, no, we're going to keep it. We're going to resolutely keep it you can never pry this out of my fingers. That's so embarrassing. I think it's I think it's, I find that more embarrassing. My lady, do I think the Rosetta Stone should be returned to Egypt? I don't. I think that if that's what it's asked for, that is something that should be discussed. I think for me, the very important step is that rather than trying to loan our way out of the issue, the deal should be, we recognize your ownership of this item that we looted. May we borrow it? That would, for me, that would be far less embarrassing. It doesn't need to necessarily go, as I see it, go home, if for whatever reason that is not the most useful thing to be done for all parties concerned. I think that ownership should be recognized, and then we go from there. And if we go on the basis of, yeah, we looted this, so yeah, this is rightfully yours, may we find a way for this to stay where it is for now? What can we do to make that possible? That's where I'm sort of sitting, and I change my mind on this all the time. And like I say, I'm not an expert in this. Steve, I want to see replicas coloured like original marbles. This is the other thing. If we had 3D printed identical replicas, we could do cool stuff with them, because we also know the kinds of paints that were on them. We could fully reproduce what it would have looked like. I work for RAM in Exeter, and the volunteers help with Hannah. Says yes. I don't know what RAM. Royal is that? Tell me what RAM stands for, please. I'm sorry. Apologies. Courtney with a spoon, give back people stuff. I mean, if that's what they asked for, yeah. I know that we could recognize the sheer weight of looted goods, because there are, frankly, God knows how many objects that we have looted, that we know we've looted, that haven't been requested back. And that may be for a variety of reasons. So I also recognize that just that giving it back is maybe the right thing to do, but it may also not be. Recognizing ownership and then finding a way to either fund museums or work out loans or whatever it may be, it needs to be done in a way that gives everybody the best chance of succeeding. And to me, that then doesn't embarrass anybody. If this is done consciously and carefully, no one needs to be embarrassed. Oh, the RAM is the Royal Albert Museum. Thank you very much. Courtney, whether they are safe or not, it's not the country's responsibility. It's the country's responsibility to take care of them. I thought that some countries better take care of objects as imperious. Yeah, I completely agree. I also know that there are some places that have the objects have been looted from that aren't asking for them back for a variety of reasons. They would rather do other stuff. But for me, the bar where the start point is recognition of ownership, and then we go from there. and the conversation and direction of travel cannot be mandated or negotiated based upon a British or Eurocentric understanding of how an object should be treated. I've seen people say, oh, well, if we give this item back, then it'll be used in a shrine and it'll be prayed to and it'll be touched and it'll be damaged. Fine. Fine. So it's a religious item. Touch it. Pray to it. I mean, people don't seem to be particularly bothered in European nations where the boobs of female statues are rubbed almost raw. Okay. Use it. It doesn't have to be, even in a museum. It's not our call. But yeah, so I think the loan, I have questions about the loan things. Anyway, more repatriations. We can certainly discuss this. I think this is not going away. We have been talking about these repatriations for since I've started doing these news items, before they were even live. So, indigenous cultural belongings. We talked about this. This perhaps should have been an update. We talked about the Vatican saying they were going to give this stuff back. We talked about it leaving. It's turned up. Fabulous. So 62 items have arrived in Montreal. They are there. These are items that come from First Nation, Inuit, and Metis communities. 62 cultural items previously held in Vatican museums and vaults have now landed. The National Chief of the Assembly of First Nations said, quote, "Today is another important step, but it's far from the end. It's only the beginning, and we won't rest until all our artifacts are home." The majority of the items are still unknown. 14 items are of Inuit provenance, including a kayak. One is Metis, and the remaining belongs to First Nations across Canada. A delegation of elders have been sent. They are knowledge keepers and also residential school survivors. They've all gone to Rome to hold ceremonies while the items are being packed for transfer. They see this as, quote, rescuing our ancestors from the Vatican. We're all looking forward to seeing our belongings, feel the mountains, winds, and the warmth of the sun, and the cleansing energies of our lands and waters. Now they are back home with us. Our nation will assert their rights to determine how best to take care of them. These are not simply artifacts, they are our belongings, our ancestors, vital indicators of our nation's histories, our people's identities and cultures. And this sort of comes back to what we were discussing, to what Courtney was touching upon as well, that if these items, if these communities want to wear them, display them, bury them, burn them, whatever, that is their call. That is their call. And I know there are going to be lots of historians and heritage professionals that wholeheartedly disagree with my stance on that. And I get it. But that is how I feel about it. That's how I feel about it. And you know what? And there may come a time where I am presented with evidence that completely disproves that, and I have to reassess the way I feel about it. But that's how I feel about it. However, what they say, the Manitoba Metis Federation, the MMF, which left the Metis National Council in 2021, was not included in this repatriation process. He said the president, David Chartrand, said he hopes the sole Metis item returned will be stored at its Metis Natural Heritage Centre. Chartrand said he views the repatriation as goodwill on behalf of the church, but noted that the items returning to Canada today represent only a small portion of Indigenous items at the Vatican. There's over up to 10,000 items under their watch and in their museums and in their storages and different places they're keeping them. That's a teeny raindrop in the bucket. Charlton said the MMF will write to the Vatican to see what items belong to the Red River Metis and the circumstances of how they ended up there. You don't take the gift back unless that reputation has been damaged or mistrust has been broken. I will not insult the previous leadership back in the 1800s or 1900s if they did give a gift in honour, because we are very closely associated with the Catholic Church. So that's also interesting, because of course, when institutions dispute loot and claim gift, what happens then? I don't know. For one group of this Metis community, it apparently seems that the idea of taking back something given as a gift is in itself dishonor. Others would, I think, there are other communities that would, of course, question whether a gift in a colonial context can ever be a gift, because is that gift giving not enforced in some way? If someone puts a gun to your head and you hand over your purse, you've not gifted them your purse. So these items were found in a thrift shop in a place called Chilliwack, British Columbia. And the shop wanted to determine whether items that were donated to the store were in fact ancient artifacts with historical significance. The employee said that a customer who did not leave their name stated the 11 rings and 2 medallions, one he thought may have been a belt buckle, that were in the display case with a price tag of $30 were perhaps potentially ancient. So they were analysed by archaeologists, and the initial visual analysis led them to suspect that based on shapes, design and constructions, they were most likely ancient artifacts from somewhere within the boundaries of what once was the Roman Empire, dating to late antiquity or perhaps the medieval period. The large medallion or belt buckle is linked to potentially comparable items from the Byzantine, however you pronounce it, period. There are disparities between two objects, suggesting different time periods, meaning they're unlikely from the same hoard. They think, assembled into an eclectic collection by an unknown person who acquired them prior to the donation to this boutique. So the thrift store donated them to SFU's Archaeology Museum. They then had to consider whether they had the capacity and expertise to care for these objects in perpetuity, and ultimately decided to commit their care and stewardship because of the potential for student learning. They accepted and transferred these objects to the museum. It took them more than a year to do so. They said they grappled with the ethical implications of acquiring a collection without known provenance, a history of ownership, and balanced this against the learning opportunities that it might offer to other students. Learning to investigate the journey of donation objects is akin to the process of provenance research in museums. By accepting items without known provenance, they must consider the ethical implications of doing so. They must guard against any, quote, direct or indirect participation in the illicit trade of cultural and natural objects. Of course, if you've got no clear provenance, it's almost impossible, if not completely impossible, to find out where they came from. So it's entirely possible these were illegally obtained or looted. They could be forgeries or legitimate copies. So the interesting thing is they have now designed, based upon this collection, a new archaeology course. It's going to run at SFU in September 2026. And it's going to focus heavily on questions of ethics and provenance, including what process would look like if the objects, if determined to be authentic, could one day be returned to their country of origin. They're going to figure out and use various technologies, so X-ray fluorescence to investigate compositions, 3D scanning and printing to recreate research for further study and for outreach. Local museum professionals are going to mentor the students in exhibition development and public engagement, which is going to be super good, useful for them if they want a career in museums or heritage in the future. They're going to get a rare opportunity to work with objects from a regional context not currently represented in the museum. And they're going to piece together the story of the items from there, which likely came far from their original home across the Atlantic. I think this sounds brilliant. I think to be a student on this course and to use these materials in this way, what a clever thing to do, to try and figure it out. I think this is what a brilliant idea to do it this way. I think that's great. Steve points out it's quite big. Looking at that gloved hand, it does look quite big. If it was a belt buckle, it would be a fairly massive one. And from my little Freudian slip about the medieval problem, in many ways, the medieval problem was a problem. Yes, I mean, frankly, not quite so problematic as the Victorians. They have caused chaos, left, right, and centre, in a variety of historical disciplines. The Victorians have got a lot to answer for. I'm going to say it. The Virginia Museum of Fine Arts have returned 41 ancient polychrome terracotta reliefs to Turkey after learning they have been illegally excavated and trafficked. So this is they received a claim from the Antiquities Trafficking Unit of the Manhattan DA's office. These artifacts were originally obtained in the 1970s, but the DA's office revealed that these were likely excavated from a 6th century BC Phrygian temple. They are valued at around $400,000, and they belong to a large series of polychrome terracotta reliefs from this 6th century temple. The museum purchased 34 terracotta reliefs in 1978 from the Summa galleries that are located in California. Another 6 were gifted by Harlan J. Burke, and then later in the year, the Summa galleries donated another relief, resulting in 41 polychrome terracotta relief fragments being added to the collection at the museum. They said, though, quote, "Stone or looted art has no place in our collection. We are therefore delighted to return these works and thank Colonel Bogdanos and his team of investigators for alerting VMFA to the presence of these illegally excavated works in our ancient art holdings. Colonel Bogdanos has praised the VMFA for its cooperation and quick action in returning these works to Turkey." Lorcan, I think we're quite problematic now, quite frankly. Correct. Agree. Yes. No notes. Yes. San Francisco's Asian Art Museum has returned stolen ancient sculptures to Thailand. It's been found that these items were illegally removed in the 1960s. They are 4 ancient bronze sculptures transferred from San Francisco's Ancient Art Museum to their original home in Thailand. This was an investigation led by the US Department of Homeland Security. Theodosia Snudpuckle asks, who would be the top predator if humans disappeared? Maybe cats. Well, I believe in the UK, the apex predator, according to my husband, is the badger. So if there were no humans, it would be those stripy-faced sons of guns, the British badger. There we go. These exhibitions that have been repatriated in this case were in a 2024 exhibition called Moving Objects, Learning from Local and Global Communities. They were connected to Douglas Latchford. We've heard his name before. He is a little cheeky man. He was a dealer who has been indicted for illegally trafficking in Southeast Asian antiquities. when confirming, Wheezy asks, is this a honey badger? No, babes. A badger. Not honey badger don't give no, honey badger don't care. Not that badger. Like blackface, white stripes on the eyes, white all the way back. Slightly, do you know what they look closest to in the US? They look possibly closest to like a Pepe Le Pew skunk. But they are our badgers. They're different. I've seen American badgers. They're different to American badgers. A British badger's different. So when this provenance was confirmed, the museum's governing body unanimously approved the return through a two-stage voting process in 2024, and it was finalised in the April just gone. Careful research has been done, and there is a commitment to doing what is right. They will be cared for, they will be returning home. Their repatriation is not only safeguarding an important part of heritage, but also allows their history to continue as an enduring part of the Thai nation. A report at the ceremony asked why the museum had failed to investigate the sculpture's provenance, despite suspicions dating back to acquisitions decades ago. And a spokesperson said, I think because of attitudes about the art market and about art culture, heritage have changed tremendously in the West over the past couple of decades. There's so many repatriations. We're still going, friends. The San Antonio Museum of Art repatriates 9 antiquities to Italy, most of which date from the 4th century BC, including a terracotta statue of a woman with and elaborate red figure vessels. So we've got a marble head of Hermes from the 2nd century AD. We have got a terracotta and pigment sculpture of a woman from the 4th or 3rd century BC. And we have also got a fish plate from the workshop of Astius and Python, which is from around 340 BC, and a crater or mixing bowl with a nude young man and a seated woman attributed to Python from around 330 BC on the side. So Luigi La Rocha, who leads Italy's Department for the Protection of Cultural Heritage, said in a statement, quote, this agreement strengthens cultural relations between Italy and the United States and stands as an international best practice in the field of combating illicit trafficking of cultural property. This is not the first time that photographs seized during the investigations into the smuggler Giacomo Medici, who was convicted in 2004, have provided key evidence decades later. Last year, the Altes Museum in Berlin returned 21 Apulian vases to Italy after 4 of them were identified in Polaroid photos found in Medici's office in Geneva. We have talked about him before as well. We're on to our last repatriation. Museum knows little to nothing about a new display. Thousands of African objects given and stolen and forcefully taken at the height of the British Empire have gone on display at a museum, and the curators admit they have almost no record of where they came from. These items have been taken out of storage by the Manchester Museum and placed in its Africa hub to highlight the gaps and silences in its record. In one case, all that's known about a figure of a horse with an ibis on its back is that it was donated by a Mrs. M.A. Bellhouse in 1976. No information about its name, place of origin, or traditional use. The museum said it hopes that the honest approach will provoke conversation about how the item should be displayed or even returned. The curator, Lucy Edimati, said the Africa Hub gallery was unlike most others, as it was, quote, the beginning rather than the culmination of years of research. Quote, it's a chance to do our thinking in public with honesty and transparency and to involve people in that process for the start. I think this is really interesting. More than 40,000 objects from across Africa, many collected during the period of the British Empire, arrived into the museum's collection. Some were taken via trade, others through anthropology, confiscation, and looting. Many have sat in storage for years with key details about them absent. So their object labels thus missing. The museum is part of the University of Manchester, and they have said the items could be returned to their place of origin or the exhibition could lead to working with the diaspora communities to develop ways of sharing and celebrating cultural heritage. Other items on display include those from the Igbo people, one of the largest ethnic groups in West Africa. The chairwoman from the Igbo community of Greater Manchester, the ICM, said, quote, some of these objects were given, some were stolen, some were taken forcefully out of conquest. It's important we start bringing them together again. It shows inclusiveness. It shows there is strength in diversity. It shows that we are one people, irrespective of our colour or where we're from. Something must hold us together. So Steve's going to go look at it. Yeah, thank you. I think I want to have a look as well at this. And Sarah says it looks like they're handling it well. I agree. And also prepared to be corrected. But for me, this feels like a really positive step. And I think if it works, and the way, of course, it works is that lots of us go and see it and we show our interest and we back it. That's how things like this work. And that's how it becomes fashionable. Ultimately, this is how we need things like this to become fashionable. It is, I agree, it's a first step. But these conversations need to happen, and they need to happen in the open. I completely agree with the curator. I think this is really interesting. I'm gonna see if I can get contact and reach out. I think this is great. Theodosius Snudpuckle, what are you referring to? What's this water TARDIS? Possibly. We used to work in a apartment in Paris once. It was full of chinoiserie. I mean, look, one thing I don't know a lot about chinoiserie, and I couldn't tell you what is looted from a dynasty in China and what was made for the commercial market. But what I do know is that there was a lot that was created for the commercial market, and there was such a passion for it that people were making money hand over fist, both here and there. Oh, the lower right, is that a TARDIS? This bit here? No, I think it's an exhibition gallery that says Africa Hub. This bit, yes, that's. I can see what you mean. The way the roof arches up, it does look a little bit TARDIS-y. I can see. And Steve, if I come to Manchester, I will alert you. We're at the end of our repatriations. We still have many things to go on. We have now to move on to our new news. Come with me, friends. Oldest evidence of human fire making has been discovered at a site in England. It's in Suffolk, apparently made by Neanderthals about 415,000 years ago. This is a milestone for evolutionary lineage, and this milestone in fire making occurred far earlier than previously thought. The fire was situated near a watering hole where these humans encamped. Until now, the earliest known evidence of fire making was from about 50,000 years ago at a site in northern France, also attributed to Neanderthals. The controlled use of fire was a landmark event for the human evolutionary lineage, not only for cooking, but for providing for protection from predators, and also warmth that enabled hunter-gatherers to thrive in colder climates, like Britain, for example. So a paleoanthropologist and the co-author of this study, Chris Stringer, said that no human fossil remains were found at the Barnum site, but noted that pieces of a human skull about 400,000 years old and characteristics of a Neanderthal were found in the mid-20th century, less than 100 miles to the south, at a town called Swanscombe. The Barnum firemakers were very likely to be early Neanderthals, like the Swanscombe and Sima people. Proves archaeological work at the site has given the scientists a good understanding of what the place was like at the time the hearth was made, with a rich array of animals from elephants to smaller mammals and birds, evidence of human activity in the form of cut marks on animal bones. There is archaeological evidence from Africa dating to more than 1 million years ago of humans using naturally occurring fire from wildfires or lightning strikes, but those sites lack evidence of deliberate fire making. The researchers have spent 4 years conducting tests to show that the evidence from the Barnum was deliberately made fire. They said numerous pieces of evidence demonstrated this, including geochemical testing that revealed there had been temperatures of more than 700 degrees Celsius, 1,290 degrees Fahrenheit, with repeated fire use in the same location. Very interesting. Archaeologists have unearthed 6,000 years of history beneath the Palace of Westminster in London. It indicates the site was inhabited long before the monumental landscapes such as Stonehenge. They have found over 60 struck flint flakes. That's a tongue twister, including a shaped tool. They were found in deep, undisturbed sand deposits. It's thought that they belong, based on the shape, to the late Mesolithic or early Neolithic period, so around 4,300 BCE. There has been a multi-year program of investigations carried out as part of the Palace's Restoration and Renewal Initiative. The flints were found on what was once Thorney Island. That is where the Palace of Westminster and then Westminster Abbey were ultimately built, are believed to represent an area used by early communities for fishing, hunting, and gathering resources. The preservation of untouched sand makes them extremely rare and underlines the area's importance long before it became a centre for royal and political power. I would argue that's perhaps the reason why it becomes a centre for royal and political power, because it was incredibly useful, and people like to stay in useful places. They've also got a range of artefacts from spanning the centuries. They've got medieval leather footwear, so they've got a boot and several shoe soles. They've got fragments of a finely decorated clay tobacco pipe from around the 19th century. So it states the rebuilding of the palace following the fire of 1834, likely to have been used by stonemasons on the site. We've got what we can see here is a medieval leaf badge shaped like a flowering heart, which was a common 14th and 15th century emblem. And then we've got this bit of tile is medieval floor that's thought to come from the 11th century palace decoration. By the end of this phase, a total of 14 trial pits, 10 geoarchaeological boreholes, and extensive foreshore surveys will have been completed. It's going to continue through 2026 with a comprehensive report on the findings expected in 2027. Jessie, is Palace of Westminster where Parliament is now? Yes. And interconnected with it is Westminster Abbey. So all of that sort of site is Thorney Island. And it gets its name Westminster because it's the minster in the west. The minster in the east is where St. Paul's is now. That's the East Minster, but it's known better as St. Paul's. Steve, yes, I have made a video on Westminster. I will see if I can find a link that, or if anybody else can, then I have made a video talking about, this is how I know this stuff, talking about Thorney Island and the East Minster, all of that kind of thing, and the building of Westminster Hall and stuff. So I have got that video. If you go into my videos and then you search my channel and just search Westminster, it should come up, I believe. Talk about the finds. My husband's texted me about these five Sorry, 6,000-year-old finds. Jacob Rees-Mogg remembers them when they were discarded there originally. Probably does. He probably does. That's when he was first turned into a vampire. That somebody described him as a haunted pencil. Correct. Correct. They have found wildcat bones dating back over 5,500 years in the Burren. It's the earliest directly dated wildcat ever found in Ireland. It was made by Dr. Marion Dowd, and the bones date to around, as it's at 3,600 BC. Until this discovery, no prehistoric cat remains in Ireland had been radiocarbon dated, which left, Julesy says, is it Thorny or Thorny Island? The second one, Thorny. But I think it's Thorny, Ney. You're asking dyslexic, but I feel like it's Thorn, the second one you've written, EY. Question mark. Thorny Island. Theodosius Snudpuckle says, is Thorny Island still an island? It's not glitched. I'm thinking of how to answer this. Now, we have got a lot of lost rivers, some of which are lost because they're now underground rivers. If the rivers are still underground and the land above them has been reclaimed, does that mean the island is gone? Or does it mean that it's still on a river delta? Question mark. A river delta that means it's still an island. So in short, I don't know. Maybe? How does one determine what an island is? Not a silly question at all, because it's just made my brain hurt. Okay, so 39 bones belonging to an adult wildcat were discovered deep within the Glencorran cave. No evidence of human interference, indicating that the animal died naturally inside the cave. Apparently, this transforms what they thought they knew about Ireland's ancient wildlife. And it raises major new questions. So, were wildcats introduced by early hunter-gatherers during the Mesolithic period, or did they arrive thousands of years earlier with Neolithic farmers? How long did they survive in Ireland before extinction? Why are so few prehistoric cat remains known? They don't know when wildcats arrived in Ireland or when they vanished. Medieval writers mentioned them in the Irish landscape, but these may have simply been feral domestic cats. Dowd, who is the archaeologist, expressed hope that further analyses of cat remains from other sites might reveal how wildcats reached Ireland, how they lived, and when and why they vanished from the Irish landscape. Oh, so Steve says, yes, I did one about the Royal Palace, thinking about adding the post-Tudor period. Oh, I can definitely look into that. How Palace becomes Parliament as well. I can look into that. Thank you. Archaeologists have found a lost Book of the Dead in an Egyptian cemetery. Located it in a 3,500-year-old cemetery containing mummies and statues. This is a papyrus scroll measuring over 43 feet in length. In central Egypt, archaeologists discovered one of these elaborate scenes. It's a 3,500-year-old New Kingdom cemetery with mummies, amulets, statues, canopic jars, and a 43-foot-long papyrus scroll containing part of the Book of the Dead. It is the first complete papyrus that was found in the Al-Ghara area and is, quote, characterized by being in good condition. These texts, which apparently can differ based upon the writer, first appeared at the start of the New Kingdom around 1550 BC. So locating one in good condition from the era isn't a common occurrence. If it's that long and well preserved, then it's certainly a great and interesting find. Apparently, it's very rare to find a copy in the grave it was originally buried in. Although without photographs and original publication describing the text, it's very hard to verify the details of the find. The team apparently located stone and wooden coffins containing mummies, more than 25,000 Ushbati statues, an untold number of utensils, thousands of stone and wooden amulets, and canopic jars. The engraved and coloured coffins, including that of Tade Isa, the daughter of Eret Haru, the high priest of Jeshuti in Alamashun, were highlights of the collection. Beside her coffin were 2 boxes with her canopic vessels, and there was also a complete set of Ushbati statues and a statue of the ostrich-like deity Parsoka. What I'm interested by what sounds like some doubt. So that quote, if it's that long and well preserved, then it's certainly a great and interesting find. This is Laura Weiss, who is the CEO of Roma and Piselius Museum in Germany. And then Foy Scalf, who's an Egyptologist at the University of Chicago, said it's, quote, very rare to find a copy in the grave it was originally buried in. Although without photographs and official publication describing the text, it's very hard to verify the details of the find. I've talked before about how there are these murmurings that I'm not completely privy to. I'm just nosy. So I've sort of heard rumblings because I'm nosy, but I do not anywhere near really understand what the rumblings are about in their full context. But the rumblings seem to be voicing that a lot of these, because there's been this enormous glut of finds coming out of Egypt, and there are rumblings from some quarters saying that these finds may not be what they are being presented as. I don't really know what that means. Either who they're connected to is being stretched or mistaken or rushed. There's rumblings, and I feel like those rumblings are in that article. Yeah, Lorcan, there's rumours that they're holding stuff back. It could be that they're holding information back, in which case announcing that you found this thing publicly as an archaeologist without presenting a peer reviewable study, find, explanation in a journal is not the normal way of things. So one of the reasons why the full information about finds takes so long to fully come out, and we'll often say, oh, this was discovered 4 years ago, but we're just learning about it now, is because researchers need to figure out all sorts of things about it to work out what it's made of, when it might have been buried, when it might have been created, and all of that can take years and years and years. It then needs to be written up in a scholarly style article that is then submitted to a journal, peer reviewed in that journal. The peers who review it then offer their commentary, questions, criticisms. It then usually, almost always, will need to be reworked and rewritten, resubmitted to peer review. You see where I'm going with this? I wonder if the concern is that these finds are being announced without going through those steps. And I also then wonder what that means. So, MJ's Garden, the article makes it sound like there's some context missing. Yes. And they are, and the way they're talking about it, if this is what it says it is, it's really exciting. It's that, so they haven't seen the evidence that makes them feel like they can back it. I don't know what that means. I'm sure there will be updates. On the Thorny Island, Mr. Dr. Cat has come through. It is no longer an island as it has been absorbed by the mainland, and the River Tyburn is incorporated into the sewage network. So no longer an island. Thank you for that. More pharaoh news. An ancient Egyptian pharaoh moved another ruler's body and stole his tomb, apparently. Archaeologists have found 225 shabtis, which are figurines meant to work for the deceased in the afterlife, in a pharaoh's tomb. They belong to the pharaoh Shoshenq III, but they are inside the tomb of a different pharaoh. They were found at a site of Tanis in northern Egypt, in the northern chamber of the tomb of Osirkoren II, near an unmarked sarcophagus. Hieroglyphics on the shabtis allow the team to identify who they belonged to. The tomb and sarcophagus was discovered in 1939, but the shabtis were found recently by an Egyptian-French team that's doing conservation work. It's believed that these figurines would work for the deceased in the afterlife, doing a wide variety of tasks like farm work, giving the deceased objects, and it's something that powerful tend to be buried with. These are made of glazed ceramic. And the fact that they were found in this one person's tomb indicates that Shoshenq III was not buried in his tomb, but rather in an unmarked sarcophagus in the tomb of Osirkoren II. So researchers have known about this tomb, but they didn't know that Shoshenq III was buried there. They do point out that in ancient Egypt, it wasn't unusual for tombs to be reused. However, why Shoshenq IV might have reused the tomb of Shoshenq III and moved him to the tomb of Osirkoren II is unclear. Conservation of the tomb and the analyses of the shabtis and inscriptions are ongoing. Archaeologists have found an ancient shipwreck of a pleasure boat off of Alexandria. This is a 2,000-year-old wreck. The vessel's hull was found. It's more than 35 meters long and 7 meters wide. There was Greek graffiti on the vessel that, quote, could date from the first half of the 1st century AD and supports the hypothesis that the ship was built in Alexandria. We are told the boat, quote, would have had a luxuriously decorated cabin and it appears to have been propelled solely by oars. The city was founded by Alexander the Great in 331 BCE. A series of earthquakes and tidal waves struck the coast and submerged an island that was then discovered in 1996. Over the years, divers have recovered statues, coins, and other treasures that are in some cases on display at the Greco-Roman Museum of Alexandria. There is going to be research done on this wreck that, quote, promises to be a fascinating journey into the life, religion, wealth, and waterway pleasures of ancient Roman Egypt. Alexandria is home to ancient ruins and historic treasures, but Egypt's second largest city is especially vulnerable to climate change and rising sea levels, sinking by more than 3 millimeters every year. Apparently, even in the United Nations best case scenario, a third of Alexandria will be underwater or uninhabitable by 2050. Steve wonders if the mark in the foreground might be a shipwright's mark. I have absolutely no idea, but that's really interesting. I have no idea what modern shipwrights marks would look like, much less an ancient one such as this. That's very interesting. Look, and yeah, just a chill weekend on the yacht. Apparently stretches back thousands of years. History really did repeat for the rich. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Quite. Still doing it. Theodosius Snudpuckle. Humans are weird. Correct. I agree. 100. There is, to quote somebody's grandma, there's noughts the queerest folk. That was a great TV show when I was younger. Queer as Folk. What an iconic TV show. I was in my teens when that came out. Charlie Hunnam. Fabulous. A structure for observing celestial movement predates the Chanquillo Observatory. The Peruvian Ministry of Culture has announced the discovery of an early Andean Andes that predates the Chanquillo Solar Observatory, which was long regarded as the earliest known observatory in the Americas. It's the Kazma River and its tributary, the Septim River, contained a large concentration of ancient ruins that were associated with the Kazma Septim culture, which dates from around 2000 to 1000 BC, and it's known as some of the oldest monumental architecture in the Americas. A press statement by the Peruvian state has said that the structure has a clear solar orientation and was purposely designed for observing celestial movements. Quote, these discoveries solidify Kazma's position as one of the world's most important ancient astronomical centres. The Ministry of Culture continues its restoration and enhancement work on the 13 towers and the Solar Observatory, with the goal of opening this section of the site to public in the coming years. This is from the Peruvian state. I'm glad a lot of others of you have seen Queer as Folk. It was brilliant, and also, so Aidan Gillen was phenomenal in that. And if you've watched Game of Thrones, he, of course, did an incredible job in that as well. What an amazing actor. And I think he was also was he in The West Wing? I know he was in a US kind of political style drama or crime drama, like a series. He's a phenomenal actor. And obviously Charlie Hunnam's career has just gone from strength to strength. What a great show that was. And it was really so groundbreaking at the time. Yeah, brilliant show. Props to Queer as Folk. No one, it hardly ever gets mentioned in like kind of those. I genuinely think that it was a huge cultural shift. Like it doesn't get the credit I think it deserves for that. Cranberry Moonshine. Queer as Folk is one of those things that's lived in my memory for all these years, and I had no one to talk about it yet. Yes, yeah, yeah. It was so formative for me and my kind of understanding of the world and of society, and it absolutely affected the communities I became part of, the friends that I made. Like it was fundamentally changing to who I was as a person. Absolutely. Theodosia Snudpuckle, I think you're asking if Russell T Davies made it. I don't know who made it. I've got no idea. Yorkie Grit, excellent show. Rewatched it recently. I'm really pleased. I'm really pleased. Yeah, great show. Next up with our new news, a 2,700-year-old tomb in Greece contains a burial of a woman with an upside-down crown. Now, I believe I have chopped out the picture of human remains, so that might be in this article that if you click upon it. Oh, Stuart Grant, Russell T Davies wrote it. Okay, thank you. Russell T Davies wrote it. So good. Yeah. Now, as for this upside down crown, the thought is this is a grave of an ousted noblewoman who they're calling her the lady with the inverted diadem. This is a 7th century BC burial, and there is a bronze crown placed upside down on the woman's head, a signal, they think, of a final end to her power. It was found in East Central Greece, about 60 miles northwest of Athens during construction work. And they have found 40 graves thus far, burials of high social status people who died in the archaic and classical periods, that's 800 to 323 BC. This grave stood out above the rest. There's a woman who was about 20 to 30 years old when she died, and she's buried with numerous bronze grave goods. There's a pin with geometric style horses, a necklace, and a vase-shaped amulet, bone and ivory beads, copper earrings, bracelets, and several spiral rings. The bronze diadem particularly caught archaeologists' attention as it had this large rosette on the front and a scene of facing pairs of male and female lions on the back. The crown was upside down on her head, so the lions appeared to be lying down. As lions were symbols of royal power and authority, this is thought to symbolize the resignation or fall of a ruler. So this woman might have lost her privileged position during a time of social and political upheaval. The time when she died was apparently a difficult time in Greek history, eventually solved by the lawmaker Solon's reforms that laid the foundation for Athenian democracy. The archaeologists also found the burial of a 4-year-old child near the woman. The child was crowned with a bronze diadem with small rosettes, dating to the same period as the woman, suggesting they may have been related in some way. My husband said, so in addition to writing the Queer as Folk, in a BBC News article published this morning, his next show is tipped to be one of the shows to watch in 2026. Stuart points out Russell T Davies got away with It's a Sin more recently, which is also fairly graphic. I mean, look, if Game of Thrones can happen with, frankly, gratuitous physical and sexual violence, that in some cases it's questionable how much that needed to be shown, I think. Did we need to see quite so many nipples for the plot to move along? No, I don't think so. I haven't seen It's a Sin. I want to check that out though, because it did look amazing. But Queer as Folk wasn't. It was shocking for the time because a lot of the. I mean, I remember the way members of the LGBT community were being treated for various reasons, but also principally as a child, I remember the response to AIDS, and I remember the horrendous adverts that were designed to terrify and shame. And I remember clearly because my mum was friends with lots of gay men, and so I spent lots of time around gay men. And I remember there being comments about my mother allowing me to be in that world. And I remember my mother being called up to school because I talked about homosexuals, because Section 28 was in force. So I went from being somebody who I started primary school in a world where my mother was called up to school because I talked about gay people, to before I had left school, I was watching Queer as Folk on the TV. Like that is a sea change that happened. And it didn't feel shocking or horrendous or weird to me. It felt very much like I felt about as awkward as I feel watching anybody else kissing anybody else when I was about 13 or 14. You know, but I think the thing for me is that I had the privilege of being in community with diverse people from a very young age, and I had the privilege of being raised by people who were bigots. Cranberry Moonchild, do I remember those terrible adverts of the big monolith? Yeah, don't die of ignorance. I remember it vividly. Horrendous. Roman military might have helped bring cats to Europe. Not wild cats here, domestic cats. Dogs have been by our side for about 20,000 years, but cats, when they were domesticated, that's apparently a lot more murky. The suggestion is that it was assisted by the Roman military, with house cats apparently reaching Britain by about 100 CE. This is from a study that's been published in the journal Science. It's believed that humans began to live with cats about 9,500 years ago in the Levant, but it took a lot longer for them to come over here. They became a staple in ancient Egypt roughly 3,500 years ago. Genetically speaking, apparently modern house cats are also different from the African wildcat that's native to both Egypt and Turkey. But there is a lack of archaeological evidence and problems with distinguishing domestic cats from their wild counterparts based on DNA in their bones, which has left some major gaps in the house cat's history. Genetic evidence indicates that modern cats did not arrive in Europe until roughly 2,000 years ago, which is much more recent than expected, meaning that they were not brought over by Neolithic farmers from Turkey and Egypt. After North African domestic cats were introduced, they spread into Europe via the Roman military routes. Soldiers probably used felines as a form of rodent control. These earlier cats from Europe and Turkey were genetically European wild cats. Hybridization, where two genetically distinct parents create fertile offspring, was likely behind this genetic split and not domestication. I don't really know what all these things mean, but it sounds very interesting. In a commentary on the study's findings, the evolutionary biologist Jonathan Losos concluded, quote, ever sphinx-like, cats give up their secrets grudgingly. Yet more ancient DNA is needed to unravel these mysteries of long ago. So Flint Dibble, I don't know what the channel is, apparently has done a video about cats recently. So for the cat lovers, check it out. This orange cat looks like he or she has more than one brain cell. Yes, cats are smart, I feel. I feel they are smart. Yorkie Grit's got a Bengal sent to the chat. Lovely. Jessie, orange cats are a genetic minority. Oh. And apparently 80% of them are male, making female orange cats even rarer. That's wild. I didn't know that. Thank you for that. Why would that be? That is a question for another day. Fluffy Monkey, imagine if we didn't have cats. Well, I'll be honest with you. I am solidly a dog person. I wish cats no harm. I am minorly allergic to them. But I, as a human, Virgo, egotist, I don't know, I need to be adored by the items that come into my home and the animals that come into my home. I need adoration. And cats are too disdainful to me. You have to earn their love in a way that I don't enjoy. I like unwavering devotion and obedience. Personally, I don't want to have to work at it. I understand cats graceful. Gorgeous. Love it. This is it, Jessie. Dogs have owners, cats have staff. Look, that's it. I like to be queen of my house. I like adoration. I don't want to have to compete with something that's probably better than me. Oh, Subi's got a stage 5 trainer for a cat, though. Tell us my cat who lives on my body at every available moment. Yeah. I reliably wish to be worshipped. So, as my husband's just texted, there's only room for one alpha, correct? And that alpha is me. Oh, Wheezy, you called your cat Lady Jane Grey. That's a lovely name for a cat. I love it. Jamie coming in with some, Jamie McCormack coming in with some excellent cat news. So ginger cats, normally male. Tortoiseshells, normally female. White cats with blue eyes, often also deaf. I never knew any of this stuff. I never knew any of this stuff. That's very interesting. Coco Creates has got a Maine Coon. They look amazing. They also massive. Love that. Love that. I love hearing about cats in your life. I don't think anything's gonna change me from being solidly a dog person. I love a puppy. I love a little doggy. I like a little fluffy puppy. Staying with Rome, scientists have discovered the secret of ancient Roman concrete at Pompeii, which may sound not particularly interesting, but I was taken by the fact that ancient Roman concrete is like, they call it self-healing. I don't know what this means. So when people talk about, oh, they found the secrets of Roman concrete, well, concrete's concrete. Not this stuff. This is self-healing. I don't know what that means, though. And it allowed the Romans to revolutionize architecture. So they've got a building project that was underway when Vesuvius erupted. And they came across a room where walls were unfinished and there were piles of pre-mixed dry material and tools for weighing and measuring that were in place to prepare the concrete. So they got to study this. They talked about how it was almost like standing beside the workers as they mixed and placed their concrete. Concrete helped the Romans to erect structures including stadiums like the Colosseum, domed temples like the Parthenon, public baths, other big buildings, aqueducts and bridges, unlike anything that was fashioned before then. This concrete could harden underwater. It was also vital for constructing harbours and breakwaters. The precise method they used to make their concrete is debated, but the recent discoveries seem to contradict the accounts that were given by a 1st century BC treatise by Roman architect and engineer Vitruvius. The Pompeii discovery showed that Romans used a technique called hot mixing, where material called quicklime, dry limestone that was probably previously heated, was combined directly with water and a blend of volcanic rock and ash, producing a chemical reaction that naturally heats the mixture. This is different from the method that's described by Vitruvius, who wrote about a century later. So they industrialized concrete, and this allowed builders to construct massive monolithic structures, vaults, domes, harbors with concrete that cured underwater, concrete that expanded what could be built and how cities and infrastructures could be conceived. Modern concretes lack a self-healing capability, which is increasingly important as we seek longer-lasting, lower-maintenance infrastructure. So while the ancient process itself is not a direct replacement for modern standards, the principles revealed can inform the design of next-generation, durable, lower-carbon concretes. Now, I wonder if Vitruvius made a mistake, or if Vitruvius deliberately gave the wrong recipe because in some way the concrete was, the knowledge of how to make the concrete was viewed as proprietary in that time. Yorkie Grit, isn't volcanic dust one of the ingredients in self-healing concrete? It seems to be. That seems to be what they're saying. Volcanic rock and ash. Yes. And Steve points out the concrete is interesting because it sets under water. Yeah, absolutely. Apparently, the volcanic ash is, or ponzite is a volcanic ash. Yeah. Sarah points out maybe it's ancient patent law. Yeah, maybe Vitruvius is not mistaken. Maybe it's deliberate. Speaking of which, and volcanic eruptions, there is a suggestion that maybe the date of the eruption of Vitruvius is wrong, because some of the victims of the eruption seem to be found wearing heavy wool garments, which doesn't make sense if it happened in August, they say. The eruption lasted for an approximate 18 hours. So why are they in these heavy wool garments? So maybe this is a sign that this is the wrong time of the year. The other theory is they were wearing wool because that's what people had to wear at the time. Linen, cotton, silk were delicate, reserved for the wealthy clientele. Wool was hardy, warm, and inexpensive. So perhaps that's it. The date could be debatable as well. It's possible, of course, that the August just happened to be colder than was previously thought. Perhaps that region in that August happened to be experiencing a cold spell. So one of three things is happening. Either the August date is wrong, it happened at a cold time of the year, or it happened to be cold in that August, or even though it was hot, people wore what they had and they may only have had woolen garments. Those are the options. But interesting that they found people in August at the time that this is erupting when they seem to be wearing heavy duty wool. Wheezy says linen is accessible. It is, it potentially, however, linen tends not to be as hard wearing as wool. And it also tends not to be quite as versatile, because wearing linen when it's very cold, and only linen, means that you stay very cold. Wool, yeah, you might be a bit sweaty, sure, but there are potentially ways and means that you can still stay cool. It's still a natural fibre. Stuart says that perhaps the pollen seeds might suggest that it was more like October. Well, I think we're going to see some more information on this, and there's going to be more updates. And as there are, I will, of course, let you know. The Mesoamerican city of Teotihuacan. That's a hard one to do. A lost city. It's thought that the language may have been decoded. This is a Mesoamerican city. And it was, the ruins are near to Mexico City, and in there are murals that it's thought represent an ancient writing system. This location was once home to 125,000 residents, but it's now a popular destination for tourists and archaeologists. But about 2,000 years ago, it was home to this population. When you sift through the pyramids of this once great city, it's been hard to understand the people who once lived there. However, now they may have some greater understanding because they have translated this language. This could have implications for their entire understanding of Mesoamerican cultures, and of course point to a solution to the mystery surrounding the inhabitants of this location that was founded in 100 BCE. It was a major cultural center for central Mexico for around 700 years, and evidence shows that it had great cultural significance in ancient Mesoamerica. So they point out there are many different cultures in Mexico, and some of them can be linked to specific archaeological cultures, but others are more uncertain. This location is one of those more uncertain places, and they don't know what language they spoke or what later cultures were linked to it. However, a link may be about to become more clear, because they propose that the writing they found shared basic principle with other Mesoamerican scribal traditions, namely the Uto-Aztecan language immediately ancestral to Nahuatl, Cora, and Huixtol. This indicates the Aztec population arrived in an area northeast of present-day Mexico City much earlier than previously believed. This translation hasn't been simple. The written language uses a mix of logograms, where an image of a coyote directly translates to coyote, and rebus or rebus, where the sounds of the objects must be merged to form a word, a more conceptual, difficult to decipher approach. So to untangle the language, they had to know how words would have sounded 2,000 years ago. You can still find pottery with these texts on it, and they do know that they believe that more murals will turn up as well. What makes it trickier is this is the first. No one has used a language that fits this time period to decipher this written language. No one has been able to prove that certain logograms had a phonetic value that could be used in contexts other than the logogram's main meaning. So they have created a method that can serve as a baseline for others to build on in order to expand their understanding of the texts. Very interesting. Carol said, didn't they, this is about Pompeii, didn't they find graffiti that staged a later month? Did they? I have not seen that. If anybody's got an article about that, please do send it to me. I would love to have a look. Thank you. Some 3D modelling has been done. Easter Island. They have conducted research on the main quarry of Easter Island, and this is a challenging thing to do. This easternmost Polynesian island is a 6-hour flight from the nearest airport, and reaching the parts of Ronorokoru, which produce 95% of its Maui statues, requires scaling a steep, rugged slope of a volcano. And then in 2022, that became impossible because a wildfire swept through the quarry. Nevertheless, over the course of 6 months, geographers flew dozens of drone flights over the quarry to take more than 11,000 overlapping photographs that have then now been stitched together using a process known as photogrammetry. Something like that. To create a high-res 3D model of the quarry that's now freely available online. If you go to the link 31 in the description box and you click on it, there is a clicky link in the article to go and see that online. The lead scholar on this project referred to it as a, quote, archaeological Disneyland. The model offers a daunting sense of context in the precarity of an island the size of Brooklyn, surrounded by endless blue of the Pacific Ocean. Zoom in, and the Herculean effort required to sculpt and prize giant rocks on the side of the volcano becomes a little clearer. Between the 13th and 17th centuries, more than 900 of these rocks would be formed into these shaped sculptures. So, and it's color-coded. You can see it all here, color-coded. The blue is an indication of spaces from which moai were removed, so-called rectangular quarried voids. There are 133 of these. Some rest at the base of the slope, and many are improbably located at its peak. Parts marked in yellow are sculptures in progress, of which there are more than 400. Some are no more than the bulge of a nose in a hunk of rock. Others stand gloriously fully formed on the road below. There's a 3D map that has everything you could possibly imagine about the construction of these moai. You can see things you couldn't actually see on the ground, the tops and sides and all kinds of areas you would never be able to walk to. The 3D model has been used to investigate how the megalithic statues were carved and what this process says about the society that produced them. Life on Easter Island was clan-based and decentralised, a social structure that's evident in the separate residential clusters and discrete ceremonial centres dotted around the island. This pattern carried through to the creation of moai. Researchers have identified 30 geographically distinct quarrying areas in which the entire production chain, from cutting to carving, was carried out by 4 to 6 clan members. The range of approaches used, researchers say, is proof that these clans were autonomous. More recently, the team have settled one of the defining mysteries of Easter Island, though. How were these sculptures, these carvings, transported? A study and field experiment show the Rapa Nui likely, quote, walked the statues into place, rocking them from side to side using rope. To prove a point, Lippo and a team of researchers walked a replica moai 300 feet in 40 minutes. How interesting. Well, there we go. I look forward to checking out that link. How cool is that? We have the only known depiction of a pregnant Viking woman. This is found in a 10th century elite woman's burial in Sweden. It was uncovered in 1920. It's known as the Ash Pendant, and it's in the collection of the Swedish History Museum. It's about 1.5 inches or 4 centimeters in diameter, and it's made out of gilded silver. A ring encloses a female figure who stands with her legs spread, her hands clasped under her pregnant belly. The top of the pendant is worn down. Lines above the woman's head suggest a crown or a headdress. She wears a cloak buttoned at the neck and pearl-like beaded accessory. There is disagreement as to whether or not this pendant actually depicts a deceased Viking woman. The museum says that it might depict the Norse goddess Freya, associated with pregnancy and childbirth. Freya wore a special necklace called the Brisingamen, the descriptions of which closely match the button clasp and rows of beads on the ash pendant. It may therefore have been a talisman for the woman in the grave. Given the range of artifacts discovered in this woman's grave included a wolf-headed iron staff and the series of heirloom pendants, it's thought she might have had a prominent role as a practitioner of magic or ritual. And later graves in the Asker area lack similar ritual objects, according to a study by an archaeologist called Hida Gustafsson, which might mean that the Viking woman buried in the mound was the last pagan practitioner of her kind before the introduction of Christianity into the region, and that her Freya pendant was buried with her. Oh, I like it. I like a Freya pendant. A 2,400-year-old fingerprint found on a plank for a boat sheds light on ancient seafarers. This is Scandinavia's oldest plank boat. The fingerprint is thought to belong to somebody who repaired the craft. This is known as the Hortspring boat. It was discovered in southern Denmark in the 1880s and then excavated in the 1920s, and it's now on view at the National Museum of Denmark. It is thought to have been part of a larger fleet used to attack the island of Als off modern-day Denmark in the 4th century BCE. So, archaeologists from Lund University in Sweden, in collaboration with the University of Gothenburg's Maritime Encounters Research Program, looked for untouched pieces of the vessel, working on fragments of caulking, tar, and rope. And there they found an uncovered fingerprint. The sex and identity of the owner of the print is a mystery. The scientists used 3D modeling, carbon dating, which dated the boat, said that the boat was produced between 381 and 161 BCE. So that's the Iron Age in Scandinavia. They also used X-ray tomography, gas chromatography, and mass spectrometry. Rope makers aided the research as they talked about how the rope was produced. And here we've got the corking showing the fingerprint. The chemical makeup of the corking shifted ideas about where the seafarers came from, as they found a composition of animal fat mixed with pine pitch or resin. They thought that the vessel had come from a region near modern-day Hamburg in Germany, but this pine pitch waterproofing suggests the Baltic Sea region is a more likely origin. If the boat came from the pine forest-rich coastal regions of the Baltic Sea, it means the warriors who attacked the island of Ols chose to launch a maritime raid over hundreds of kilometres of open sea. The team is perhaps going to look next at the Planck's tree rings to determine precisely where they came from. They're also hoping to extract ancient DNA from the corking tar on the boat that they hope will give them a more detailed level of information on the ancient people who used the boat. How interesting is that? Julesy, I love it when you can see fingerprints in pottery and stuff like that. It is really cool, that sort of, that trace. Next up, friends, we have got a shiny thing. A lovely shiny thing. There we are. A jewel worthy of a duke, a medieval treasure uncovered in a moat. The moat of Castle Kolno in Poland. Researchers from the University of Wrocław have found this ornate silver-gilt amethyst jewel that was once part of a larger brooch. It was found during systematic excavations of the historic ducal stronghold, and you can see the clear craftsmanship, but also the circumstances of the loss. Precious metal jewellery is usually recovered from hoards or elite burials. This piece was found in sediment accumulated between timber bridge posts at the northern crossing of a castle moat, which suggests that it might have been lost by someone travelling to or from the fortress in the early 14th to mid 15th century. This castle originally functioned as a ducal customs point on the medieval border between the duchies of Opole and Brezig. Its first documented owner is a man called Duke Bolesław III of Brezig, and subsequent noble residents would have hosted high-ranking visitors. And so this jewel reflects this elite environment. It's consistent with our aristocratic jewellery of the period. To determine its composition and manufacturing technique, the research team have, of course, done a lot of advanced but non-destructive analyses. X-ray fluorescence, electron microscopy, and energy dispersive spectroscopy, so SEM-EDS. The artifact, they say, was produced from silver and enhanced with fire gilding. This is a sophisticated process where gold is applied using mercury. Elevated mercury signatures detected in the spectra support this conclusion. Julesy, I bet they were mad when they saw the Lost Ring. I bet they were mad when they saw the Lost Ring. Absolutely. And then Jessie, and walking on horseback, having no clue even where to begin to look. Or it slips off your hand and you go, that's in the moat. That's in the moat. How am I going to get out of the moat? Imagine if you were visiting, like you're visiting the Duke, and the ring falls off and falls in his moat. You're like, well, I could make a fuss about this, or not. This is interesting. There is a suggestion that a volcanic eruption in 1345 may have led to a, quote, butterfly effect that ultimately led to the Black Death. This is according to a new study. The thought is that because this volcanic eruption triggered a cool and overcast period in the Mediterranean, the eruption started a domino effect that led to a downturn in agricultural production, which then required merchants to import grain, and with it, the bacterium Yersinia pestis that caused bubonic plague via the Black Sea. This bubonic plague pandemic, most commonly known as the Black Death, reached Europe in 1347, so 2 years later, and it quickly affected Italian port cities. It then spread throughout Europe over the next few years. Between 30 and 60% of the population is believed to have died. The question as to how and why the Black Death reached Italy from the Black Sea precisely at this moment. So they began investigating these climate-driven changes in the Mediterranean, and their research was published in the Journal of Communications, Earth and Environment. They looked through contemporaneous accounts and they noticed reports of reduced sunshine, increased cloudiness, and dark lunar eclipse, all of which was independently reported by observers in parts of Asia and Europe between 1345 and 1349. All of these phenomena were attributed, or could be attributed, to a large-scale volcanic aerosol layer that's been known to cause cold spells and sulfate aerosols, which reflect sunlight back into space. Paleoclimate data gave researchers a clue. There was high amounts of sulfur in polar ice cores that suggested one or more eruptions of a previously unknown volcano around 1345. While they can't say much about the volcanic eruption, they do know the eruption must have taken place in the tropics, because the sulfate they found was in similar concentrations in the ice of both the North and the South poles. They also looked at tree ring data from around Europe and discovered that in the summers of 1345, 1346, and 1347, they must have been much colder than normal, and the autumns were much wetter, which would have caused soil erosion and flooding. Records also confirmed there were changes in the environment that decreased the yield of a number of crops, including grape harvest and grain production in Italy. This meant that merchants had to begin importing products from the Black Sea to prevent famine. They import the products, the boats come in with those fleas. Even though the Black Death resulted from a rare confluence of environmental and social factors, it's important to gain a better understanding of the causes of past pandemics, these researchers wrote, because, quote, the probability of zoonotic infectious diseases to emerge and translate into pandemics is likely to increase in both a globalized and warmer world. Volcanic eruptions, Steve points out, volcanic eruptions do cause short-term climate change. 1816 was the year known as the year without summer because of the eruption of an Indonesian volcano. And I believe, am I correct, led to the creation of Frankenstein? Is that the same volcano? Interesting. We've had an auction. This is Thomas Howard, 4th Duke of Norfolk. It's a painting created by Hans Eweth, a Flemish artist well known for his Tudor era portraits. And this sold at Sotheby's for $4.2 million, making it the most expensive Elizabethan portrait ever auctioned. It was created in 1562, and a decade later, this Thomas Howard, 4th Duke of Norfolk, was executed. It was put up for sale with an estimate of £2 million to £3 million. Obviously, it's now outstripped that. Quote, paintings of this quality and this kind of condition of that age very rarely appear on the market. It's spectacularly well preserved and in the most amazing condition, with very minimal, if any, retouching or damage to it. And for a painting that's nearly half a millennium old, very impressive. So Eweth is one of the principal court painters under Mary I. And According to Sotheby's, US painting A Portrait of Norfolk offers a, quote, striking glimpse into the artistry and political intrigue of the Tudor court. In 1562, this young nobleman was at the height of his power. Mary had made him Duke of Norfolk in 1554. He was in royal favour all the way through the beginning of Elizabeth's reign. Norfolk was, after all, Elizabeth's second cousin through her mother, Anne Boleyn, and he was also England's only duke at the time. Thus, he supervised all royal ceremonies and heraldic affairs. He was the most important, most powerful man in the kingdom during the reign of Elizabeth, short of the monarch herself. He was really very significant in the country. He got huge tracts of land across England. This is part of a diptych, a pair of paintings supposed to be viewed side by side. The other side being the Duke's second wife, Margaret Audley, who owned the historic Audley End house. Ewith united the portraits with a continuous backdrop, a tapestry bearing the couple's coats of arms, which you can see over on the side, and it is very beautiful. His wealth and power, though, weren't enough to protect him. In 1572, he was tried for treason when Elizabeth found that he had been plotting to marry Mary, Queen of Scots. He was then beheaded in London that year. Claw Wyndham, which is a fine art firm in London, purchased Ewith's portrait of Norfolk on behalf of the current Duke of Norfolk, who is called Edward Fitzalan Howard. The painting will now return to its subject's former home, Arundel Castle, which has been the seat of the Duchy of Norfolk for more than 8 centuries. They say, quote, it fills a gap in the collection and is a highly significant Tudor portrait. So there we go. When it's on display, I will let you know. I'm seeing some people who appear to have their phone logos up saying that they aren't seeing all the comments in the chat. I'm wondering if that's a phone thing rather than... let me try this. If this is annoying, let me know. So I can show the comments on stage and I can make the font size bigger. And I can make them wide. Is that better? Can we start to see things now if I do that? And the issue is on the, because it's sort of, I can't really control where it sits. So I hope that's going to be okay. And then maybe you can see everything popping up there. Oh, Coco Creates does say, I had to select all messages at the top and then see all. However, Coco, you are not watching or commenting through your phone. So it could be... Sarah, it's telling me that you're watching this vertically. So maybe it's a vertical video problem. Because I can see that you, Yorkie, Wheezy, and Sarah, I can see that all of you are watching it vertically because it's telling me, unless that's incorrect, it's telling me you're watching it vertically. Whereas Coco, you're on your phone, but you're horizontal. Okay, so it's wherever you're watching vertical video, it's giving you troubles. But horizontal is fine. We'll keep it like this and see how we go. And if I need to set it up this way in the future, I certainly will do. An archaeologist is racing to preserve Sudan's heritage as war threatens to erase its cultural past. So this is in the French National Institute for Art History. The Sudanese archaeologist Shadia Adrabo is looking at a photograph of pottery made in her country around 7000 BC. She's typing a description of the Neolithic artifact into a spreadsheet. The war between the RSF, the Rapid Support Forces, and the Sudanese Armed Forces, the SAF, is raging. And the curator from Sudan's National Corporation for Antiquities and Museums is on a year-long research grant in France with one mission: to build an online database of the African nation's archaeological sites, museum collections, and historical archives. Just after the war started in Sudan in April 2023, museums were looted and destroyed. They don't know quite what went missing, but Arabo says that her task is to find out, and time is of the essence. She's working to secure the collection. She points out that they've already lost 2 museums and they don't want to lose more. The National Museum had pieces dating back to prehistoric times, including from the Kerma Kingdom and the Napatan era, where Kushite kings ruled the kingdom, as well as from Meroitic civilization that built Sudan's pyramids. The other galleries displayed later Christian and Islamic objects. Some of the most valuable items were mummies dating back to 2500 BC. Some of the oldest and most archaeologically significant in the world, as well as some royal Kushite treasures. UNESCO has raised the alarm about plundering and a threat to culture that appears to have reached an unprecedented level. Last month, hundreds of people were left dead and more than 80,000 forced into displacement after the capture of North Darfur's capital, El Fasher, by the RSF. This work for Adrabo is deeply personal. Quote, I'm from Nubia, from the south, an area filled with monuments, archaeological sites, and ancient life. She was working at the National Museum in the capital Khartoum when war started. Quote, we thought it would finish soon, but then life started getting really difficult, not just the bombing, but there was no electricity, no water. Efforts to protect Sudan's art were, according to Ali Noor, too slow, a Sudanese cultural heritage advocate. Quote, while applications were being drafted, sites were being emptied, or risk assessments were reviewed, entire archives vanished. UNESCO said it carried out inventories, trained police and customs officers to recognise stolen antiquities, while appealing to collectors to, quote, refrain from acquiring or taking part in the import, export, or transfer of ownership of cultural property from Sudan. But unlike other similar cultural emergencies that followed the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, quote, Sudan has not benefited from strong media coverage denouncing the degradation and plundering of its cultural heritage. This lack of visibility has reduced the international response. If we're interested in these ancient cultures, we have to be interested in Sudan. What Shadia Adrabo is doing is urgently essential, establishing what's missing. And with a team of about 15 Sudanese now working in the museum in Khartoum to clean and restore what's been damaged, they will soon be able to compare what remains there now. She's got funding until April 2026 to finish compiling the data and to build a platform, but she is concerned that won't be enough time. Quote, I'm trying to finish this database, but it's a lot. I've done about 20% of the work. Just for the National Museums, I've recorded 1,080 objects so far. And then I have to do other museums, sites, archives. I need to add pictures, ID numbers, coordinates. We're working on tracking what's been looted, she said. I cry when I talk about this. My only goal and message is to bring back as much as possible, to do as much as I can for Sudan, but it's not easy for us. And it's not just the war itself, but consequences of that could affect the country's heritage. Militias, people displaced. It's not safe for art to be in unsecure locations. Until the war finishes, we just don't know what's going to happen. Jim Wilcox, she's doing an incredible job. War destroys culture. It's the same here. Steve points out there's more pyramids in Sudan than Egypt. James, I hope nothing more gets destroyed. Of course, no more lives lost. Absolutely. Coco, is there any way to remotely help with logging item numbers? I don't know. I don't know. So her name is, so she is Doctor, and her name is spelled as follows: SHADIAABDRABO. And on the one hand, I she's not, to that I can see, she's not asking for help with cataloguing. And I'm loath to say email her because she has enough work on her hands without having to field emails. But if you Google her and you find her website, then maybe if there is a call out for help, if you're following, that would be the place to see it. That's my recommendation, is to try it. I will be following her, and if I see her put out a call, then I will also share that as well. But as I can, from what I'm seeing currently, that call isn't being made. So this is what my husband sent me, and I'm sharing the history ones. The incredible discoveries made in 2025, and there were quite a few of them that were historical. So we had the gigantic Jurassic footprints discovered in Oxfordshire, which we've talked about. 200 enormous footprints left behind 166 million years ago. We've got two different dinosaurs here. A long-necked sauropod, thought to be a Cetiosaurus, and a two-legged, is it legged or legged? Two-legged carnivore, Megalosaurus. Some of these tracks stretch for up to 150 meters. They could perhaps even extend further. And also humans mastering flames 400,000 years ago, which we talked about now. This is the site in Barnham, Suffolk. And as well, showing there, humans apparently rank surprisingly high in monogamy, that 66% of humans form monogamous bonds. We outscore chimps and gorillas, but we do fall short of the California deer mouse, the true heavyweight and champion of lifelong love. But humans are far from the most monogamous creatures. Our tendency to pair up for life is still remarkable compared with many other species, but we're not quite as good as the sweet little California deer mouse. Bless it. We're going back to the Louvre. There's a water leak in the Louvre. Perhaps another reason for them to require the extra funds by charging non-EU citizens more. This one has damaged hundreds of works. The Museum's Deputy Administrator, Francis Steinbock, said that between 300 and 400 works, mostly books, have been affected by the leak, and the count is still ongoing. The damage occurred in the Egyptian department. The volumes are those consulted by Egyptologists. Apparently, no precious books were affected. Problem that caused the leak was discovered in late November, had been known about for years. Repairs are scheduled for next year. The volumes are going to be dried, sent to a bookbinder, and restored before being returned to the shelves. They are described as being Egyptology journals and scientific documentation from the late 19th and early 20th centuries. No heritage artifacts have apparently been affected by the damage. They say at this stage there are no irreparable and definitive losses in the collection. The structural weakness prompted a partial closure of the galleries hosting the Greek vases and offices. And then that was November. October, the burglars made off with jewels worth 88 million euro, which of course showed off glaring security gaps, and those jewels still have not been recovered. The museum has since moved most of its precious jewels to the Bank of France. There was a report published in October by France's public audit body, known as the Cour des Comptes, that criticised the museum's excessive spending on artwork, which it said was, quote, to the detriment of the maintenance and renovation of the buildings. So this move to charge non-EU citizens more definitely makes some sense. A dinosaur remains have been sold at auction. 68-million-year-old dinosaur skeleton has gone under the hammer at auction in London at Christie's. It's went for £3,466,000. This is a Cairngorthid question mark on pronunciation skeleton from the Cretaceous period. It's found in North America and Asia, and it's thought that it had feathers. This one has been nicknamed Spike. It's made up of approximately 100 different fossil bones. Discovered in 2022 in the state of South Dakota in the US. It dates from between 68 and 66 million years ago. It's about 2 meters in height. The sale of dinosaur fossils through auction for huge sums of money has come under some criticism from paleontologists who say that the cost stops many public museums from being able to afford them. But others argue that many private fossil collectors share their dinosaurs with museums and many are on public display. It's a pretty cool. I thought, yeah, if you aren't sharing those things with museums, is it just somebody who's like, you walk in their hallway, and I imagine they've got one of those like twin staircases, and there's like a grand piano and a marble floor and a chandelier, and is beneath it just a 2-meter dinosaur like my Spike. What's you? There you are. Is it behind a rope? Can you have a picture? Do you wander around it when they have like a New Year's party? Like, what happens here? How other people live? Hey. Our last new news. I haven't put it in ding dongs, and I'm going to be very limited on my commentary of this because I work for HRP as a contractor. So I'm not going to say assert a judgment on this because I don't think I'm allowed to, but I'm going to tell you what has happened. There have been 4 arrests made after a group threw apple crumble and custard at a display case that contains part of the crown jewels in the Tower of London. Police were called. It happened at 10 in the morning. This is the case of the imperial state crown, typically worn by the king at formal ceremonies. So 4 people have been arrested on suspicion of criminal damage. The jewel house was temporarily closed while it was investigated. The group is called Take Back Power, apparently an offshoot of Just Stop Oil. It described itself as a new non-violent civil resistance group, and it's claimed that it was behind the incident. It carried out the stunt to demand the UK government establishes a permanent citizens' assembly or House of the People with the power to tax extreme wealth and fix Britain. The police minister, Sarah Jones, said the incident was disgraceful, adding that there is a clear difference between the democratic right to protest and unacceptable behaviour. Footage shared by Take Back Power on social media showed one protester removing a large foil tray of crumble from a bag before slamming it against the glass, protecting the imperial state crown. Another then poured a tub of bright yellow custard on the case. Democracy has crumbled, one protester could be heard shouting. Another added, Britain is broken. We've come here to the jewels of the nation to take back power. Surprised tourists reacted to the stunt. HRP have confirmed the imperial state crown was not damaged, and the jewel house reopens to the public early in the afternoon. This is the second demonstration to be claimed by the group in the past few days. They emptied 3 bags of manure onto the floor of the Ritz Hotel lobby under its 25-foot Christmas tree. They have emerged in recent weeks on social media channels used by Just Stop Oil activists. The protest group refers to Take Back Power as a new project. Just Stop Oil are responsible for a high number of high-profile protests. They threw soup on Van Gogh's sunflowers. They climbed onto motorway gantries. They announced they were ending their use of direct action in March. So the imperial state crown is pictured here. It's worn by Charles III. He left Westminster on his coronation day in 2023. Monarchs are crowned with St Edward's crown. This is different. It's used during formal occasions like the state opening of Parliament. And when it's not there, it's in the jewel house at the Tower of London. It was made for the coronation of George VI in 1937. It contains 2,864 diamonds, 17 sapphires, 11 emeralds, 4 rubies, and 269 pearls. Apparently it weighs over a kilogram. I wonder if one of those rubies that they're counting is the Black Prince's ruby, because I I believe there's a question as to whether the Black Princess Ruby is in fact ruby or if it is in fact a spinel. You've got King Edward Sapphire and you've got Cullinan II, which was cut from the largest diamond in the world. So that happened. I don't know what I can say. I don't know what I am permitted to say because I enjoy my job. But I couldn't let it pass without saying something. And we're going to move directly on to the ding-dongery. So, ding-dong and up your bum. So, police have recovered a Fabergé pendant from a man accused of swallowing it. And apparently they recovered it from his poo-poos. He swallowed the item in a jewellery store. New Zealand police have spent 6 days monitoring every bowel movement of the subject. Good Lord, they've earned their keep, haven't they? The 33,000 New Zealand dollar or 19,000 American dollar James Bond Octopussy pendant was recovered from his gas. Was recovered. This is a no eating section. Sorry, should have said that. No eating right now. If you're eating, stop eating or pause this. It was recovered from his gastrointestinal tract by natural means without requiring medical intervention, which means, friends, he pooped it out. A 32-year-old man has been in custody since he swallowed the ornate pendant in Auckland on the 28th of November. He was arrested inside the store minutes after the alleged theft. So you can see here a gloved hand holding the recovered pendant, still attached to a gold chain, with an intact price tag. What is that price tag made of? And also, it's on a tissue. Boke, massive boke. The pendant was inspired by the 1983 James Bond film Octopussy. Central to the film's plot is a dual smuggling operation that involves a fake Fabergé egg. The suspect appeared in Auckland District Court apparently on the 8th of December. I haven't seen an update yet. This egg, one of only 50 made, is made of gold, painted with green enamel, encrusted with 183 diamonds and 2 sapphires. It is 8.4 centimeters tall and mounted on a stand. It opens to reveal an 18-karat gold, yellow gold octopus nestled inside, adorned with a white diamond suckers and black diamond eyes. The octopus surprise pays homage to the eponymous antagonist in the centre of the Octopussy film. Dear Lord. Dear Lord. Someone had to clean that. It's the fact that it's still on a tissue. It's on loo roll. That's loo roll. That's a blue gloved hand holding the egg he laid from his bum hole. Oh no! That really squicks me out. That really squicks me out. Lord. Shannon, do we know how he ate it? I assume just dropped it in. Quickly, I assume. Maybe he has little to no gag reflex. Different issue. Coco, I wonder if the sale price will go up or down now. The things people will buy from other people on the internet. Ooh. I can. Yeah. Yeah. Jules suggests maybe it was wrapped in sheepskin then eaten. I feel that making it bigger is probably not the look. It's about the size of one's thumb. So, like, it's a reasonable sized grape. The chain's going to be an issue. I'll give you that. Maybe you go grape first. Do you know what? I don't want to associate grapes with this, particularly not. Nope, and we're done. That's it, and we're done. Next ding dong, and that's where I. What? Jules, it might have stayed cleaner if it had been wrapped in sheepskin. James, swallowed, not stirred. Now, if that was on a t-shirt, that would be indecent. Oh dear. Look, everyone's focused on it going in. I'm concerned about the diamond encrusted thing making its way out with the chain attached. It's like when a dog tries to be a skipping rope. Just, Okay. Hundreds of museum items have been taken in a raid. More than 600 artifacts of cultural value have been stolen from Bristol Museum, including military memorabilia, jewellery, natural history pieces, carved ivory, bronze and silver figurines, all taken from this archive in the Cumberland Basin in the early hours of the 25th of September. Pictured here is CCTV images of 4 men that have been released after the British Empire and Commonwealth collection items were stolen. The theft was discovered by staff the following day. It had been ransacked. These were from the collection of the former British Empire and Commonwealth Museum that was donated to the British Museum after its liquidation in 2013. The items include military badges and pins from the East India Company. The archives were broken into twice, with 95% of the stolen items being taken in the second raid. The CCTV incident was from the second of these robberies. So there's jewellery, carved figurines. These artifacts were not on display in the British Museum, but they did form an important link between the city and its history. They are part of a collection that documents the links between Britain and countries formerly part of the Empire from the late 18th century to the late 20th century. It's of cultural significance to many countries and provides an invaluable record and insight into the lives of those involved in and affected by the British Empire. If anybody recognises the men captured on the CCTV, and I'm going to tell you, you would probably have to do it by clothing alone. If you know these people, you would know them because you would recognize them and their friends by their clothing. I don't know if they've got any moving image. Sometimes you can tell people by the way they walk. Perhaps if the video is available to view somewhere, have a look at that. Police are keen to speak to anybody who recognises the men who've been captured on the CCTV or who may have seen these possible stolen items being sold online. The description of the men, they are all thought to be white. The first described as being of medium stocky build, wearing a white cap, black jacket, and light-coloured trousers and black trainers. The second man described as being a slim build, wearing a grey hooded jacket, black trousers, and black trainers. The third man, a green cap, black jacket, light-coloured shorts, and white trainers. He apparently walks with a slight limp in his right leg. The fourth is described as being of large build, wearing a two-toned orange and navy or black puffy jacket, black trousers, and black and white trainers. The council spokesman said police decided to delay a public appeal about the thefts until it had undertaken initial inquiries. They also took time for these staff to audit the thousands of items that they held in the stores to find out exactly what's missing. If you recognise somebody in this, then please do get in touch with the relevant police force. It's all going to be linked in the article. Now, though, friends, and also, as Julesy points out, the guy in that two-tone orange jacket is bald at the crown. Weezy says, yeah, changing their clothes is easy, but however, if you know these people, you know the clothes they have. So they might have wearing them now, but if you know this person, you know they have that jacket. If somebody knows one of these people or knows all of them because they know one of them intimately and they know the rest of their friends, you'd recognize them from these images. I think some of these clothing items are distinctive. I mean, also, if you don't know where they were on the early hours of the 25th of September, that's another great shout. So, events and exhibitions. This is an event, I suppose. There's now a database containing the names of soldiers serving the English crown from the late 1350s to 1453. As you can see, I put my own surname in there, Marchant, alone, and I have found 75 records. So there were 75 soldiers serving the English crown from the late 1350s to 1453 who had the surname Marchant. This study is coming from their pay. You can find out lots of things about them. So have a look, check your own surname, and see what you can find out about it. It is linked, of course, and that is an online resource. We have this exhibition at the V&A. That is going to be open until the 22nd of March, 2026. We've got some months left to see it. This is Marie Antoinette style. So 250 years of design, fashion, film, and art connected to, inspired by Marie Antoinette. And the ticket prices, if you go on a weekday, it's £23. If you go on a weekend, £25. Unless, of course, you have got V&A membership or something else that connects to it. Cranberry Moonchild, where is the soldier thing linked? If you go into the description box and you go to number 44, it's linked there. So it's number 44 on the description box. For my Australian friends or people visiting Australia, Treasures of the Viking Hoard, the Galloway Hoard, that is on display, and it's going to be there just under a month left. 26th of January 2026. This is early medieval Scotland. It's a hoard, a trove of Viking age treasures, jewellery, personal heirlooms, one-of-a-kind objects from far away as Central Asia. This was found in 2014 by metal detectorists, and you've got things from the early kingdoms of Britain and Ireland, mainland Europe, and as far away as Central Asia, containing over 5 kilograms of silver, gold, and other materials. So this is in Melbourne, Australia. It's the Melbourne Museum. And the next one is also in Melbourne, next and final. This is also in Melbourne, different museum, part, I believe, of the same museum group. This one is called Transmutation, Our Origin Story. It's looking at Papua New Guinean cultural traditions, matriarchal lineage, and contemporary art and how they converge. And this is going to be open until the 28th of February, 2026. And as for both of those exhibitions, and indeed the V&A exhibition, you will notice that there is a secondary line underneath the entry, so an A line. That is, so you've got the numbered thing, and then you've got A. That is for accessibility. So there will be a link to where you can get tickets, etc. And beneath it is all accessibility information if you require it for your visit. So if you are visually or hearing impaired, or you require the use of a wheelchair or other walking device, this is the information that you need, and there should also be links if you need further help and assistance. There we go. If you go and see any of these things, please do let me know and what you think of them as well. Take some pictures if you are permitted to do so. This one, friends, has gone on for an hour longer. I always say, oh, it's about 2.5 hours. Well, we're coming in at 3.5 hours now, pals. And what a way to end 2025. The next time we will be speaking will be in the next Friday video. And the next Friday video does take us into 2026. So I'm looking forward to being in the chat with you on that one. If you possibly can join us. Thank you all so much for taking time out of your morning, evening, whatever, to come and chat with me about these news items. And if you're watching on the playback, thank you for your time. Thank you also for everybody, all of your support throughout 2025. Thank you for watching my videos. Thank you for commenting. Thank you for chatting to me in the premieres and in the lives. It really means ever so much to have this wonderful community of history nerds. I've said before, I genuinely don't know how I would have got through the experience of 2020, losing my job, being pregnant, it being a pandemic, having a baby while the world was still shut down. I honestly don't know quite who I would be if I hadn't had somewhere to come that wasn't all about that, frankly, unspeakably, while I was very happy to be having a baby, everything else surrounding it was deeply distressing and terrifying. And so I'm incredibly grateful, and I credit all of you with keeping my marbles for me, because I'm not sure I'd have them all. It was a bad time, even though it was a good result in the end. So thank you for your support, not just in 2025, but since I started my channel. And I'm very, very grateful and hoping that we can do some fun things. I love hearing suggestions for videos going forward as well. One thing I think I'm going to put a post up about, I'm going to ask for suggestions. I don't really want to make it kind of like a true or false. Things from history that you believe to be true or think might be true that you just want fact checked. So you tell me, did this thing happen, true or false? And I can maybe make a video about it in the new year. I think that'll be a fun thing to kick us off with. So I'm going to make a post about that soon. In the meantime, have a lovely rest of your Monday, however much you have of it. I've got 3 minutes left of my Monday. Have a wonderful rest of your week. Also, have an incredibly happy New Year. I hope that you have a lovely New Year's Eve and that it marks the beginning of a healthy and happy 2026 for all of you, in which I also hope that we will have lots of chances to chat about history and just nerd out together. For now, though, I hope you're going to have a wonderful day, whatever you're doing. Please do make sure to click all of the things. I've got some banners up here as well. I've put the banner up. Please do make sure that you go to my website so that you can sign up for the mailing list and I can tell you what I'm doing, because sometimes YouTube, even if you have liked, subscribed, commented, hit the bell icon, select it all, please do make sure that you have also joined over on the website on the contact page, because that does let me send you out an email once a week so I can tell you all about what I've been up to. I look forward to speaking to you all in my next video. But for now, whatever you're doing today, I hope you have a wonderful day and do take care of yourselves. It's going to be bye-bye from me.